Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 27th special meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today is Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have all of Council in attendance. Tonight's special meeting of Council is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the question period sign-up sheet, which is on the table to the double doors to my left. Please note that the Council Procedure Bylaw states questions will only be taken on staff reports, consent items, or other business items. Recognizing that most of you in attendance tonight have been at previous council meetings, I'm not going to go through the long statement about public decorum and no clapping, jeering, or cheering, or other demonstrations of emotion from the audience, please. And I trust everyone will be respectful of those basic considerations. First item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please. We have some.
Yes, thank you, Worship, and good evening, Council. For late items tonight, we have agenda item 8A, Mayor's Leaders Table. We are replacing the Nanaimo Accord document with the revised version. For agenda item 12C, emissions intensive heavy industry uses, we're adding the following delegations. Number 1, Paul Chapman. Number 2, Erica Frank. Number 3, Andrew and Alex Hodson Degan. Cheryl Bancroft. Number 5, Bethany Ricker. And number 6, Carolee Park. For agenda item 13B, rezoning application for 2080 and 2160 East Wellington Road. We're adding a presentation from Mark Holland, West Plan Consulting Group, Carl Taves, Highland Properties, and Glenn Froese, Highland Properties. For agenda item 13C, development permit application for DP 1397 3679 Shenton Road. We're adding a delegation from Jackson Lowe, Low Hammond Rowe Architects. For agenda item 13D, we are adding a delegation from David Din. And agenda item 17B, Councillor Eastmere motion regarding the Lost Intersections public art installation. We're adding a delegation from Amelia Jalan-Sue, and that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Mayor's report. I only have 2 items tonight. The first is very good news. It's to confirm that the municipal boundary extension has received provincial approval, which means that Snuneymuxw First Nation reserve lands are now included for voting purposes within the municipal boundary. It arose out of a joint request from Snuneymuxw First Nation and the City of Nanaimo to expand Nanaimo's municipal boundary to include Snuneymuxw reserve lands because otherwise they had the right to vote, of course, in all elections, including for school board, but had to vote for a regional director. And in particular, this was a bit silly when you consider that IR number 1, for instance, is completely surrounded by the jurisdiction of the City of Nanaimo. It is a positive move for this city and a positive move on the road to reconciliation, and recognizes a long-standing irritant is the kindest term I can use between the larger community and the Snuneymuxw First Nation. That is a very good news story. However, it is with great sadness, as I've known him for 55 years, that Nanaimo City Councillor, formerly Bill Holdham, has passed. I first met him as a student at what was then Malaspina College. His wife, Willie, and I contested a nomination for a certain political party some years ago. She became my constituency assistant. And I can say that on behalf of Nanaimo City Council and the residents of our community, we extend to Bill's family our sincerest condolences. Many people had the privilege of knowing and working with him. He had very long roots in this community. He was one of that, almost the first year, but not quite, the first faculty of Malaspina College. He was a professor of English and First Nation Studies at Malaspina College University, now VIU, from 1970 to 2001. He was a Nanaimo school trustee from 1976 to 1980, and again from 1982 to 86, and during that time he served as chair for 5 years. He was a Nanaimo City Councilor and Regional Board Director from 1986 to 96, and again from 1999 to 2011. Only our much beloved Lloyd Sherry probably exceeded the length of service to this community. He was in addition a Nanaimo Co-op board member from 1998 to 99, and he was the Vancouver Island Regional Library Chair, a position that Councillor Hemmons has held from 2008 to 2010. He devoted years of his life to public service and helping shape the future of this community. He brought dedication and a genuine commitment to that community. He brought those qualities to his role, and his contributions helped advance important conversations and decisions that continue to influence our city today. Those who serve on council, we all hope, and I think I can say this of the current council, because they care deeply about the place they call home. Bill Holdom was no exception. He believed in Nanaimo, and he worked to make our community stronger and better prepared for the future. Public service often demands long hours, difficult decisions, incredible personal sacrifice, particularly in terms of your relationship with your family. And Bill met those responsibilities with a sincere desire to serve the public interest, and he did it with a smile on his face. He never bore rancor. He was not one of those people who easily criticized anyone around him or criticized those who took a contrary position. The loss of former Councillor Holdom is felt not only by those who knew him in a personal way, but by the broader community he served. As we reflect on his life and legacy, we recognize the lasting value of his contribution and the role he played in Nanaimo's civic life. You would be hard-pressed, as I've mentioned by way of service, to find someone who served as long on both the school board and on council. And it is, of course, a mark of our respect and thanks to him that the Nanaimo City flag at City Hall has been lowered to half-mast in honor of his passing. This gesture reflects our community's gratitude for his years of service and acknowledges the impact he had on Nanaimo and its residents. I might say that when I think of Bill Holdom, he reminds me of what the late Hubert Horatio Humphrey said of himself in his life in politics. He was a happy warrior. Bill was our happy warrior. On behalf of the residents of the City of Nanaimo, again, and all members of our council, past and present, I offer our heartfelt sympathies and thanks for Bill Holdom's years of dedication to all of us and to the city he so loved. We have nothing to rise and report on, Ms. Gurry. The Mayor's Leaders Table, the Nanaimo Accord, delighted to welcome Donna Hayes, who's a member of the Mayor's Leaders Table, and Colin Stansfield, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, is with us tonight. Is Colin? Not yet, not seen, all right. Ms. Hayes, welcome. You're no stranger to this podium and to service to the community. Thank you for all you do.
Your Worship and Council, thank you very much for entertaining our conversation today. Colin sends his regrets. He is on vacation with his family on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. So it was about a year ago today that I came before this council on behalf of the Mayor's Leaders team and asked for your support in working on a strategic planning session with various organizations, institutions, and community leaders within our community. And I am very proud today to come and give you an update of what has happened during the course of the last 12 months. Hopefully, all of you had an opportunity to read through the documents that we previously submitted, and I want to start the presentation with the opening line of our preamble, and it's that Nanaimo stands at a moment of consequence and possibility. And I have to say that everyone that came to the table to have these conversations about what the future of Nanaimo and what its impact to Vancouver Island could be, none of us came to the table thinking that there was possibility and consequence. We came to the table knowing that there was. And we came with the intent of putting it on paper to come together to share tonight and with our various organizations about what we think we can bring to the future growth and prosperity of Nanaimo and Central Vancouver Island as a region. Quickly, I want to share with you who was at the table. The City of Nanaimo, the Mayor represented the City of Nanaimo along with many of your staff members. SFN and Petroglyph Developments was at the table. The Port Authority, the Airport, Vancouver Island University, the School District, the Chamber of Commerce, the Nanaimo Foundation, the Nanaimo District Hospital Foundation, and Island Health all came together in 5 sessions to talk about what the future of our community means to the people who live, work, and play here. So what we came away with wasn't what we thought we were going to come away with at the first meeting. We've come away with a document that we're introducing you tonight as the Nanaimo Accord. It's a shared commitment to move with purpose, coordinated action, and build lasting prosperity across Nanaimo, and I would say the region, because as I share what's in the document and how we intend to move forward with the document, you're going to see it's not just the people in Nanaimo we're talking about. It is definitely the people on Vancouver Island and the impact that we will have to those not only here, but in British Columbia and in Canada as we move forward. So why did this process matter, and why does it need to happen now? And it's because we strongly feel that we are entering a decade where isolated effort will no longer be enough. We're acting independently on independent projects will not get us the results that we need. We need to act with one voice as one community. We are no longer speaking as individuals or individual organizations. We are truly speaking as a community moving forward. Growth is accelerating the demand for housing. Every one of you here knows these pieces. Healthcare, major infrastructure. We're all searching globally for talent and services to relocate here and to provide those services to our community. Major public and Indigenous-led investments are moving at the same time. Senior governments and investors need to see one coherent Nanaimo story. The opportunity is real, and so is the need for alignment between our organizations. So where the Accord came from, the concept was bred at the Mayor's Leaders Table, where we identified the need for a shared civic vision and framework for moving forward. We came to you, we shared that. With your blessing, we went forward to the community partners that I mentioned, and we had our 5 meetings over the course of this last year, with the last one happening this past Thursday. At those meetings, each of the partners was asked to share their visions, their strategic plans, and the impact that they thought they could bring to the community, and what change could happen if they were actually to partner on some of those opportunities. And I can tell you that from that table, major conversations are already happening before we ratify the Accord. Things like workforce housing in the healthcare sector, to enlarge our next project, whether it's our cardiovascular intervention center at the hospital or our tower, which will mean a 40% increase in healthcare workers in our community. We're already working on a joint project at that table on what daycare and what workforce housing would look like, just by actually having meetings and talking about what our shared visions could be. We put forward a portfolio where institutions put together their high impact projects, and we created a document. And then we've put together the Nanaimo Accord. The process was designed to coordinate with out-control partners to remain owners of their own plans while aligning around shared purposes. So here's what the Accord is, and I want it to be clear, you were given 2 documents in your package. You were given a short document, it's about 5 pages long, it has a preamble, and then you were given an Accord. And then you were given a second document which speaks to transformational projects where partnerships can be realized. The transformational projects page will grow and change. It's a living document. So it is not a stagnant piece. It will continue to be developing and growing with the partners at the table and new partners who see the vision for what Nanaimo can be, who want to invest here, what they can bring to the table. So what the Accord is a statement of our shared values and ambitions. It's a compass for aligned action and investment, and it's an invitation to work together under a common banner. But here's what it is not. It's not a bylaw, a formal policy, or a legal agreement. It is not a replacement for the city plan or partner strategies. It is not a financial commitment or new bureaucracy. This is not new red tape. This is not new government restrictions. This is about moving forward, not moving backwards. And endorsement signals alignment. It does not create legal or financial obligations in any ways to any of the people signing the accord. So when you look through the accord, you read our preamble, I read our first statement from that. What the accord specifically does is it defines our guiding principles and our values. Who are we? And we've defined them as a group. It also talks about what our collective ambitions are and what our success looks like. So in essence, it says who we are, how we're going to act together, and what is the definition of success. And then the portfolios, the transformational projects I talked about. And it's an invitation for others to join us. It's an invitation for those that are already in community to invest in strategic projects and guidelines. And it's an invitation for those who aren't here to come here and join us and be part of the prosperity we believe that we're bringing to Vancouver Island. So in essence, it's one document with two jobs. It holds the shared civic community steady and translates that commitment into visible, coordinated actions with outcomes. The core promise: we align policy, capital, infrastructure, and talent so that success is one area unlocks success in other areas. So I have recently seen this in Ottawa. This is how tangible this piece and how important this piece is. I had the opportunity to have an invitation to the Minister of Infrastructure's office to meet with staff. And I did that. I did that wearing two hats. I did that with the Port Authority to share the nation building project that the port is working on, and I've shared that nation building project at this table. I also went as the chair of the Fair Care Alliance to discuss what fair and equitable access to health care looks like for those of us that live on Vancouver Island, and what a cardiovascular center could look like. And I could see the eyes in the room glaze over and see people say, well, you're here asking for one project. So I started talking about, well, no, we're talking about workforce housing and healthcare. We're talking about veteran and seniors housing. We're talking about daycare to attract workers. We're talking about re-implementation of rail on Vancouver Island. And I started seeing that spark in the staff's eyes. So I left that meeting, and if you've been to Ottawa, you know you go to your next meeting and your next meeting. And about 3 meetings in, we get a call that says, I know you're flying out today at 5:50, and there's a major ice storm in Ottawa. It's going to be a bit of a trial to get to the airport. The minister would like you to stay till question period, which I happen to know ends at 3:30. He's not going to make it till 4. My flight's at 5:50. He needs to talk to you about what's happening in Nanaimo. The federal government is very interested in communities that can show a stacked infrastructure plan, how you are leveraging what you are building to provide prosperity and opportunities in other areas. That got myself and my port CEO, who's here with me this evening, that got us directly into a meeting with the minister to talk about what's happening in Nanaimo, and very much an excited minister saying, these are the kind of projects we can support. I did not have the accord. We need to have this document so we can be sharing it with those levels of government about how we are aligning on our values, our principles, our ambitions, because in essence, we are aligning our culture, our conduct, and tying them into outcomes. So this is just a brief example of what you'll find in the transformational project documents that is attached. We have highlighted, to start with, three major projects from 3 organizations. Now here's the reason why. These projects actually all overlap each other in a lot of ways. Taytuxton was a project introduced by SFN. I know everybody at this table is familiar with what's happening there and what a visionary project that is, how exciting that is for our community. It involves housing, it involves recreation, it involves economic growth and development. If I have to explain about the NRGH expansion, I have not been doing my job as the chair of Fair Care Alliance, and I will apologize, but I'm pretty sure you're all up to date with what's happening with healthcare and how critical it is. If you also don't know about what's happening with port expansion, I've also let you down there. But as I mentioned, we have a nation-building project which ties rail into our deep sea port, which ties directly into some of the mandates coming out of Ottawa. I can tell you that ministers are pointing to Nanaimo as their biggest opportunity in Canada for growth and how we can affect Canada as a whole. So why are these projects important? Well, they all mean that we need training programs. I had the privilege, along with the mayor, being up at VIU this past week to speak with the minister who was announcing 64 more seats in our apprenticeship programs and to talk about the importance of VIU to us as community. They are part of this accord. They will need to provide training for every single one of these projects that's listed here. The school district is involved in every one of these projects, as is our not-for-profits who will benefit from these projects and opportunity. So these are the first 3 projects to appear on our transformational project list. And I'm pushing the button, but this is not doing anything else. There it goes. So how the accord is going to be used. We're going to use it to align our partners. We're going to use it for investment attraction. We're going to use it at senior levels of government to show how we are actually truly partnering with each other as community to be impactful and bring prosperity to our community. And we're going to use it for public communication. And what does endorsement mean? We're here this evening for a specific purpose, and just so we're clear, every organization I listed is going through this exact same process. So as an example, the Port Authority Board will be bringing this back to our Port Board in September for them to endorse this document. All of the organizations I list will be signatories to this document, signing on that they are actively participating in this process. So we are here tonight as our next step in the accord to ask Council to endorse the accord as it's been put forward. We recognize, and for you to recognize the accord as a shared civic touchstone, to support partners using it to align advocacy and action, and to state that you are ready to work with others under a common banner. So next steps was this meeting. As I mentioned, every other partner group who has been part of this process is meeting with their boards, because we all have boards that we answer to get sign-off, with the plan to get sign-off early this fall. It seemed like everybody's having their board meeting in the same week in September, so we will work our way through that. We will then be meeting with our provincial and our federal local leaders to be sharing the accord and what impact we believe that it can have on community. And then we'll be sharing that further with groups like through VIEA and other organizations moving forward to show as a leadership role what Nanaimo is doing. And I truly believe, as we talk about these projects and we look at this process, this isn't just about Nanaimo. This is about everybody who lives on Vancouver Island. I said it to the minister last week at VIU, how many cities that are not urban centers can boast a port authority, can boast a university, can boast a tertiary hospital, can boast an airport. We have them all. That means we have all of the opportunity, and we are strongly aligned with our First Nations leaders. And so tonight I am here on behalf of the Mayor's Leaders Table to ask the City of Nanaimo to sign on to the accord and work with our group as we move forward in partnership with the other organizations in the City of Nanaimo to truly bring prosperity to our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hayes. Much appreciated. We have a couple of questioners. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Eastmere, please.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. When you talk about public communication, how are you going to get that out to the public?
So there will be multiple faucets. We will all, how we've talked about it, but still to be determined by boards, is we will all share it through our websites, through our social media pieces, and that would include the City of Nanaimo posting that you signed on to your pieces. We have not planned any community meetings around sharing this, but we will do it that way and through our social media.
So there'll be consistent messaging through all the partners?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you, through you. Thank you for this. I found it a very interesting document to read, and it was nice to see what I think is a shared vision that I think we've all sort of understood for a while, but to have it concisely written in this way is helpful. I think my feedback in reading it, they're like page 4 and 5, the items with the bolded text and then the item underneath, it wasn't clear to me like how to read those necessarily, because there's equal spacing. So I think the bold text and then the non-bold underneath, kind of putting them together would make it clear that those are like little headings, just from like an accessibility perspective, because you're touching on some pretty different issues there. I just wondered, do you think that it might make sense for council to wait on endorsing it until the other partners have given their feedback, just because the city is the convener of the committee, and if changes need to be made, that could be something that council would then have a chance to review how it went over with everyone else and endorse it?
So I have two comments. My first is, you have an election in October, and there's a lot of boards to sign off, so I don't know what your process is getting near the end before the election starts. Would hate the opportunity, because this council really brought this group together to form this process, so my personal feeling is you should own this process. The other piece is every single person who sat at the table was either a CEO, a CAO, or a board chair of an organization. So this wasn't our staff populating these meetings, and we've already all reviewed the documents at that level and already done our feedback for changes. So to your point about highlighting this or not, some of those things may change. My recommendation would be for this council to support the accord in principle, and if there were any major changes to be brought back to your attention after we've all had the chance to go back to our boards.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons, then Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Ms. Hayes, for being here and all of your work on this. I had the opportunity to attend a couple of these meetings, and they were very interesting. And I just want to comment on the point you just made. These are the powerhouses in Nanaimo that are sitting around this table. We have all of the major economic players. It's been fascinating. My question for you, it's wild to know that so many CAOs can coalesce upon 3 ideas for Nanaimo. Were there any others that were left off that there was a lot of interest in, or was it a solid buy-in for these 3?
So for the transformational projects?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to say that every single organization brought a minimum of 1 project to the table. And everyone agreed that these were the top 3. Now, I do want to say that at previous renderings of the Mayor's Leaders Table, where we concentrated on infrastructure, we brought forward 23 projects. The hospital and the port projects were the top of that group in that last whole process that we went through as well. And the reason is because there's a huge amount of overlap. So, the airport brought forward projects. They need some of the pieces the port's working on to support their projects. So if the pieces the port's working on happen, then their pieces will fall in as well, as an example. VIU will have some upcoming projects, but they want to be more recognized as being the education piece, as they're transforming right now into the powerhouse that they will be to support these industries going forward. And so one thing that will be attached in addition to the transformational projects is a profile of each of the partners to highlight. But as I said, that document is to be living and to be changing. So it was brought up specifically, there's not a huge emphasis right now on rail, even though that's part of the port strategic plan, and if you delve into that, you get more information about what the recommendations on rail are, but that's a strategic piece that will come to the head as some of these other pieces get accomplished.
Thank you very much. This has my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship, and absolutely has my full support. Question for you. As you go through projects and you reach success, will you continue on with the Nanaimo Accord as a group meeting? How often?
So I believe the right to talk right now is that we're probably going to meet twice a year.
Okay.
But the intent is to continue to meet. We understand players at that table will change as people retire or new people come in, but to keep that core group together, yes, we will continue to meet. These projects aren't going to be done in a year.
No.
Right? We know a hospital tower,
Yeah.
I like to say 8 years, could be 10 years, Our port strategy is a 20-year strategy.
Okay.
And so we will continue to meet to push these projects forward, yes.
So you've only got 3 projects that you're really concentrating on. How many, what's kind of is it only ever going to be 3, or are you just going to? Okay.
No, we're going to add to it as the group, as priorities emerge.
Okay.
I think we all know this. Our federal government, for instance, has been fairly clear on what their priorities are. We need to be flexible and nimble to be able to respond to opportunities for funding from them.
Yes.
The province has made a couple of things clear. I particularly look at healthcare. While the budget was not really positive overall, let's be quite honest, in terms of healthcare for Nanaimo, it was positive. Our
It was.
long-term care beds, and we're digging there right now.
That's
So
right.
we need
And
to
the concept plan?
and the concept plan
Yeah.
that's getting started, and Island Health is committed to the 12th. That's why Island Health is also at this table. So it is important for this group to remain together, but to remain nimble, and that's why the transformational project piece is a living document.
Good.
Because if we need to pivot because our federal government makes something else a priority, and one of us has that in our strategic plan, we need to be able to pull that forward, go together for the funding, and implement that right away.
Excellent. So good to have you here. Always, always want to see you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Kesselbrock.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for the presentation. I'm just curious on the process in which new projects get added or subtracted from the transformational projects portfolio.
So some will get deleted as they get accomplished, which I think is a given. Projects will get added, as I previously mentioned, as different levels of government bring forward emerging concepts or stress other things. Like defense right now is fairly important to our federal government. We at the port, for instance, know that there are lots of projects around shipbuilding and whatnot, so that might be a transformational piece that has to be added or changed in the document. The other thing is the reason that we want so I can be quite honest, this accord could be very quiet between the groups that are at the table. We could just go off and do our thing in private. We're very intentionally making it public and inviting other organizations to come forward and share their concepts or ideas that they think should be added or part of the process. Because there will be other opportunities that arise out of these projects that can't maybe be implemented by the people at the table and will involve other people. We also want to be able to use the document for other people who want to invest in this community to come forward and bring forward their pieces and projects. And so those pieces, that's why we need to remain nimble to be able to take those away that maybe become redundant or have been completed, but to add those which rise in importance.
If I may, just thank you for that, and I'm just curious, so if there's a new project that gets added, does it require signatures again by everybody, or?
No, because the signatures, I would say that it would require the group to come together and say, yes, it merits the importance. So whatever group would have to come and do it. We all did presentations to the whole group with visual strategic plans and all of that to talk about how, and then we had sessions where we talked about how we could leverage each other's assets to maybe make the project more impactful. And so whoever that group is would have to come and talk to the group about that. But they will not be signed, the accord is signed by the people that are at the table. There won't be new signatories to it, but new projects from outside groups could be added with the support of the group.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Kesselbrock.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I really appreciate the work that went into this, and you're reading through the values and the principles and the ambitions. I'm like, oh man, I can use some of this for my campaign platform. And I just reading some of the things like guiding values rooted and regenerative, restoring ecosystems, circulating wealth locally, and creating lasting generational opportunities. Also, principle of rewarding coordination, putting shared priorities first, and recognizing that collaboration achieves more than working in silos. Or some of these ambitions like making housing, childcare, and essential needs more attainable, protecting forests, rivers, and shorelines as vital community infrastructure, and building an entrepreneurial city hall that matches private sector energy with public purpose. And I guess my question is that these are all very beautiful things, and then you look at the projects like expanding the hospital and expanding the port, which will bring significant growth. And I think we've kind of moved past growth for growth's sake, and these principles and values are really wonderful things and spoken. I'm just curious, like, how do you foresee this accord supporting accountability between all the apartments to make sure that in the growth that we're going to experience, we're doing it in a way, in a good way, that is protecting, you know, these shared assets that we have environmentally, you know, funding and supporting the people that live here and the workers and keeping that wealth circulating locally. I'm just curious around how you foresee the accountability and how this accord could support that.
So one of the things that I think is critical about the accord is it is about accountability. So currently there, other than, and I'll speak as the chair of the Port Authority Board. So currently, as the Port Authority, when we do a project, we have to meet all sorts of standards, both federally and provincially, whether that's Department of Fisheries, whether that's Transport Ministry, whatever those things are. But I can do that project, or we can do that project in isolation on our own without actually going back to those in community that would be impacted and saying, hey, what are your opinions and what can you bring to the table? How should we do this in partnership? There is, the accord is about creating that accountability and going back to those partners and having those conversations and creating those relationships. Now, the last year, all of those relationships have just been strengthened. I'm not saying they didn't exist before, but they didn't exist like they exist now. And so I think the perfect example is, and I'm going to use your South End Community Center as the perfect example. When the Mayor's Leaders Table previously convened and did our infrastructure list, we talked about projects that were not about a single purpose, but that encompassed other purposes. And they included things like, how does it affect healthcare? How do they play into transportation? Where does policing play a role? What's going on with daycare? Don't just look at it as a single project, but put all of those pieces into it. And so as we move forward, we're looking to move forward as community as opposed to individuals. And when we think about projects, how does that impact, or how do you work with other organizations moving forward? That's what the Accord's about. That's its intent and its purpose, is to create that accountability on the things we agree on. Not me picking, well, we care about number 1, number 4, and number 5. It's about, we care about all 6 items on those page as a community, and so we are all going to work together to achieve all 6 items on that page.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think working in silos always leads to poor outcomes, so I think this greater integration and open dialogue on what we want to pursue and how we do it is great stuff, so thank you.
In order, Councillors Thorpe and then Manley.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, thank you, Ms. Hayes, for being here tonight and for all the work you do in our community. It's much appreciated. I enjoyed reading this report, and I found it very interesting. I suspect Council will be quite willing to support it. I was especially interested in your comments regarding global supply chains and the dangers that we're seeing there of fragmentation, the scarcity of industrial land, and the systems required to move goods. And you mentioned rail, and I'm curious and looking forward to reading more detail about that, because it's something that we keep mentioning, but we don't seem to be making progress on it. My question to you is this. As I said, I suspect Council will be highly supportive, but in terms of governance, there is a saying, first heard, deferred. And my question is, would it be satisfactory to you for Council to wait and vote on accepting or endorsing this accord in September, as opposed to immediately tonight, so that we have a chance, if we wish, to hear staff comments on it first?
I kind of shared my comments a little earlier on my thought about this, and my thought about this is that I would like to see this council take a leadership role on signing the accord. I feel strongly that the mayor convened the Mayor's Leaders Table, and it started way back in COVID to find out how our community could survive a pandemic when nobody knew the answer to that question. And then it came together to identify things like, what are the major infrastructure pieces? What's the donut economy? How do we keep youth engaged in our community? And it has evolved to where we are now, to where we actually have this engagement from all these other organizations. And really that seed started at the Mayor's Leaders Table, started through the mayor and this council putting together that group to say we need to have a voice and do something different than other communities are doing. Now I want to say that Victoria has done something similar, but in our view, not as impactful or as directed as this is with the specific partners that our group has. I think it would send a very strong signal to the other partners that this council believes that they started the conversation at the mayor's leaders table, and they are endorsing this process going forward and are taking a leadership stand on that piece. I think that would speak volumes that this council took that leadership stand.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your candor, and I'll be happy to support it myself, but I'll wait to see the will of council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Thank you for the presentation. This is a very important document, I think, and I really appreciate the process of bringing things to the table. When the different organizations are speaking with ministers, is there kind of an expectation that they're going to be promoting some of these core projects when they're speaking with ministers from provincial or federal government?
You'll find that those of us that are part of this process are already doing that. And we are co-hosting ministers as they come to community. So you will have seen Minister Farnworth, our provincial transport minister, was here a couple of weeks ago. He was hosted by the Port Authority, by the City of Nanaimo and Sunamo, working jointly together to bring ministers here. We have another invitation to federal ministers happening in November. It's the same piece. We're all inviting them to come together.
Yeah, all of these things are very connected. Yeah,
Very.
I heard you say before that if we're going to do a port expansion, we need hospital and healthcare.
Yes.
We're going to need workforce housing.
Yes.
So all of those things are integrated. I really appreciate the fact that when you go to Ottawa that you're pitching multiple projects, because I think it's really important, and it shows that we have it together. And also, you know, maybe just comment on the RDN, our commitment at the hospital board to increase taxes. I know people don't really like tax increases, but it's really important for getting these kind of projects done.
Yeah. Well, I'll put on my Fair Care hat for a minute here then. I can't speak highly enough of the work that the RDM board has done, particularly over the last 4 years. We would not be in the provincial budget with the long-term care beds, and we would not be on page 69 with a commitment of this provincial government to invest in acute care services at NRGH if the RDN had not stood up and taken a leadership role in the conversation. There's not a chance. You didn't see any other municipality in this province stand up in a leadership role that way and do that, and therefore you saw no other region in this province granted their healthcare projects. Burnaby lost phase 2 of their hospital. 7 communities in BC lost their long-term care beds. The leadership role that the RDN has taken, and I pay taxes like everybody else, so I don't like saying that we need to pay more taxes, but I was there with MSA, with the Hospital Foundation Board, encouraging the RDN to increase what they're putting away for healthcare, because we can't expect our children to have to pay for it all. We need to participate in it now. And taking the leadership role and the stance that you did with respect to the Cardiovascular Intervention Center has given Fair Care the ability to have this argument for special funding to come to our community at the federal government level, and that has never happened. So yes, this community, and that's why I'm encouraging this council tonight to once again take a leadership role in a project like this, because the RDN has done it, this council did it in forming the Mayor's Leaders Table. I know that this council are leaders and are doing things that other communities are not doing.
I appreciate that. I'm fully ready to support this. I think it's a great document, and I think we're going in a very positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you're open to it, I would like to move that Nanaimo City Council endorse the Nanaimo Accord.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. I actually had another question for the delegation, if that's okay. Thank you. Just in terms of the hospital expansion and the port expansion, it's going to require a lot of people to work there, and housing affordability has been a major issue in the community. I think, you know, when we were running the numbers, like 80% of people low to medium incomes can't afford to pay the rent here or purchase a house. You know, if they're going to spend more than 30% of their income. And that availability to house people that will be doing the work is a major choke point in being able to provide the services that we need here. Was that discussed much as a gap and something that in need of being able to be addressed as a core project in the community? And does the Tuxton project address that a little bit? I guess curious how is addressing affordability to actually like be able to provide the workers for all this growth?
So we've actually talked about this at length. I want to say that we are taking a unique perspective on it. And so we already have a project that's going to come forward. You'll probably see some announcements about it over the next 6 months or so as we get into a little bit more. But I will use the hospital as the example. There are 3,200 employees who work there currently. The Hospital Foundation has done a survey about how many of those employees feel that they need access to workforce housing. It was in the realm of 1,400 employees felt that they would, if they could access workforce housing, that would help them with affordability. And so the Hospital Foundation, and they're not the only foundation of their type. Kelowna, I believe, has done something similar on a much smaller scale. We have created a strategic partnership working with the school district around two things. One is daycare. Now, our project did not get approved in the budget to add a 100-seat daycare at the hospital campus, but that doesn't mean we're not moving forward with it, working on strategic plans forward outside of the box. So the one thing that we found, and you all know this because you hear me talk about healthcare, is we have to get outside of the box on how we fund projects. And so that means employer engagement in what workforce housing looks like. And so the Hospital Foundation currently, I sit on their board as well, we are working on 100-unit workforce housing as a start and 100-seat daycare that will go a long ways to supporting currently what's happening with hospital workers. Other large employers in town are going to have similar conversations, but now the plan is to move forward in those conversations in partnerships with other groups. So as opposed to taking it on as just on your own as an organization, it's about strategically partnering with other groups about what that looks like.
Great, thank you. And so it sounds like that conversation is happening within the partners of the Accord. Is that something or a bubbling project that could allow greater collaboration at that Accord level as a potential project to help with that coordination amongst the different groups?
Yeah, it is. And actually, I will say this, that partnership I just referenced is actually ahead of this Accord being signed because both of our boards have already agreed in principle and signed off on us moving forward on projects. So it's the idea germinated during this last year. It's just we're working faster than the Accord process took us to all come to the same place. So yes, I think you're going to find this because we're all talking about it, that this housing will be tied to part of this discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brown.
Your Worship, I just have comments for when council debates. I have no questions for the delegation.
The motion's on the floor.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're debating.
Ms. Hayes, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Your Worship. I remember when this came forward, I was skeptical at the time. I can appreciate a lot of energy and intention has gone behind it, and I do believe probably the intentions are very good. A lot of other communities have done similar, and I get it, alignment and frustrations with lack of alignment within the community. However, I will not be supporting it. I'm fairly skeptical of anything that, even if it seems minor at first, shifts conversations to the boardroom, which I think are more appropriate in the public realm. And if Nanaimo tonight signs on to this, projects can be added and they will be decided upon by folks who largely have not been elected representatives for the community as a whole. And I can imagine a scenario, I don't think anytime soon, but I could imagine a scenario where an incinerator on lands gets proposed without public debate as part of the portfolio. And I think at this table, if there is to be projects added or removed, they should come forward and be known by the community if Nanaimo is a signatory on the Accord. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll respond briefly to that. If the taxpayers are being asked to provide all the funding and all the members were being asked to provide the funding and it wasn't in a public place, that would be a different situation. But as Ms. Hayes has outlined in terms of how the Accord will work and what is proposed, I think it's perfectly reasonable. I'm also noting that we're now at 10 to 8. We have a long agenda. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I'd like to speak to it as well. I can appreciate the length of debate on this, but it is quite significant support by the community behind these three major projects. And I think that, you know, one of which has had quite numerous public debate around the hospital expansion. I think that's something that everybody has agreed on. Some of the other projects, I think, are new to the public awareness. The Tutuxton development up beside VIU is significant, and I think that it's got very strong merits and can have major positive support in the community. And also is the Duke Point expansion, and I think the idea of strengthening supply chains and being able to have Nanaimo as a hub is very important for the movement of goods. I don't know how much sort of public awareness and input, you know, for the city supporting this type of development has in the public awareness. I definitely support the expansion of the port, but I do share similar concerns to Councillor Brown in terms of the process of the city coming to the table. Now, we started up the Prosperity Corporation. That's done an amazing job bringing the players together around this accord and the mayor's leaders table, but this is the first time that it has come to the council table, and as Councillor Thorpe has brought up, you know, we always do first come to, you know, heard deferred, and it is a delegation bringing a motion forward, and we might even actually have a bylaw around a procedural bylaw on being able to make a motion on a delegation, and I'm just kind of curious, does our procedural bylaw come into effect on this?
Ms. Gary.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the procedure bylaw is on your agenda for adoption tonight, so the changes haven't been adopted yet. This matter was on your last council agenda under consent items because it came from the mayor's leaders table. So the recommendation to bring this presentation and motion to this table was on your last agenda. So just procedurally, there was a forewarning to it coming, as well as any other minutes and or discussion that happened at the mayor's leaders table is available on your agendas as well, if they've been approved. So I just wanted to note that. And as to the making a motion on there was debate whether to put this motion on here because it did come from the mayor's leaders table to have this, but my bad, I knew it was going to be on the presentation screen. So this came from the mayor's leaders table, was under consent at your last meeting that this recommendation would be before you tonight. So it's slightly different than approving a delegation's motion on the fly, just to give you that background, though it's at council's discretion, whatever you choose to do.
Okay, thank you. I do think Councillor Brown does raise some concerns on just process. Having read the accord and been, you know, privy to the discussions that have led to it, and I think the values that are outlined in it are very sound, and I think that it is for the benefit of the community, and the processes in place around the principles really do lead to a collaborative dialogue on how we go forward in the projects that we choose. And so I am supportive, and I can understand the timing challenges with the break in August and the election coming up, but it's something that I do stand behind and support, and so I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Looks like it's unanimous except for Councillor Brown. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Ms. Hayes, thank you as always for your attendance. The committee meetings for the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting held on May the 11th, June 15th, and Finance and Audit June 17th are just for receipt. No motion required. We have no consent items. Delegations unrelated to agenda items. Andrea Coutu, review of school zone speed limits. Ms. Coutu, good evening. Just introduce yourself for the record. You'll have 5 minutes, and when there's a minute left, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank
Please.
you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Andrea Coutu, and I live in Nanaimo. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge that Bill Holdham was my instructor, and I just received that news, and he was very patient with me and answered all my questions about becoming a city councilor when I was a young person, so that may affect my delivery just a little bit. But I'm here I'm here to talk to you tonight about some school zone changes. I'm not new to pedestrian safety. I was a school patrol guard for 3 years. And when I was 18, I got my trades ticket at VIU for being a flagger. I've done some advocacy in the past for traffic safety changes at Cole Harbour Playground in Vancouver, as well as working to change some rollout of the first all ages and abilities protected bike lane beside a school in Vancouver. I've also done some advocacy with BC Ed Access Society around elopement at schoolyards. I know the city is working to, what I wanted to bring forward is that I know the school zones are something the city is working on right now, but I noticed when I was dropping off my son that Nanaimo school zones aren't currently marked for all year or balanced calendar or summer school sites. Many cities have specific signs now, such as Burnaby and Coquitlam. There was a BC Supreme Court case in 2010 that established that the school day is more than just the regular school year. It can count Pro-D days, for example. The regular calendar is the definition, so whether that includes summer school or not might be a little bit up for debate, but I believe that because our aim is safety, we should be putting up signage for summer schools. The school day is defined under the school calendar regulation, is any day in session, and a day in session means the principal and teachers are scheduled to be there for instructional activities, non-instructional activities, administrative activities, but not voluntary times if they come in early to start for September. It also applies to students. The city's current plan, and I really appreciate that the transportation manager took the time to speak with me via email. The city is working on a project to establish permanent speed-reduced areas. There's a focus on the areas surrounding schools, and they'll be using the city's authority to regulate speed limits through municipal bylaws. But that phased approach is still a year away, and there's a governance and priorities meeting in September. But I think we could make some changes now just around the school zones for summer school and year-round sites. By putting up the signage for year-round and summer school sites, we could have drivers reduce their speed now. It just needs a couple of signs. The transportation manager's already looking into what it would take to order signs. Another piece I think that could be improved is a communication plan with the school district, because it's the school district that decides when school is in session, but it's the city that's responsible for the school zones. So I reached out to the school district. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I think that if the city and the district work together, there could be a communication plan just so that you know that, for example, the Learning Alternative site or Island Connect are running year-round. Another thing would be to review whether admin sites such as Dufferin and the board office, which are both within school zones, also need year-round signage. Going further, I would suggest reviewing whether secondary schools need consistent zones. I found some of the high schools had them and some don't. I would consider whether playground zoning or extending hours might better fit our changing communities, because we have out-of-school care and childcare, sports and extracurriculars, playground use, and rentals by groups serving the same populations. Burnaby actually extended their hours till 10 p.m. and while I'm not suggesting that, it's just a thought. Another thing would be to review frontage strategies for where the school district the school site doesn't front right on to a major road that may still be a challenge, such as Pleasant Valley. In closing, I'd just like to thank the city staff and councillors who took the time to respond and provide information and who are patient with me in learning about this as a parent who has to drop my child off at one of the sites. And I'm here for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very quick question. I just wanted to confirm you have not talked to the school board about this as yet. Is that right?
I emailed the school board, but
No response? Okay.
no response. I understand that someone was on vacation.
Okay. And did you talk to RCMP at all?
I haven't talked to the RCMP.
Okay. I just wondered if you'd had any feedback from them and where they were coming from, because it has certainly been a discussion at this table, and I know Councillor Armstrong has brought it up. Particularly, you know, when do you have these signs? Where are they effective? What type of signs you have near your schools and around? So, good discussion. Thank you for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questions. Thank you for the presentation tonight, taking the time. Much
Thank you.
appreciated. The next item are administrative reports. The first is consideration of new permissive tax exemptions for 2027. Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the city has 6 organizations requesting to be put on the permissive tax exemption bylaw for 2027. However, only 3 of the 6 applicants have met the criteria outlined in the grant policy and guidelines. So the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, and they're applying for the first time for their property they occupy at 6374 Metro Drive. Nanaimo Youth Services, and they're applying for their property they lease at 290 Bastion Street. And the Fraternal Order of Eagles, area number 15, and they're applying for the first time for their property that they occupy at 245 Fraser Street. A small targeted review was done on 89 properties previously listed on the 2026 PTE bylaw, as there were some outdated records in the city's files. As well, 6 properties are being recommended for removal from the PTE bylaw for 2027. Despite attempts at contact, no applications were received from the following. So the Bethlehem Investors Group for 2393 Arbert Road and 2371 Arbert Road, the Hope Lutheran Church at 2174 Departure Bay Road, and St. Andrew's United Church at 315 Fitzwilliam Street. So as these are places of worship, a portion of the property predominantly used for worship will continue to receive a statutory exemption. The remaining land around the church, up to 5 acres, can be exempted by council. So this is the portion of property that would become taxable as their application wasn't received. So having said that, staff are going to reach out one more time to these 4 properties to ask these organizations to encourage them to get their application in, because there are significant property values. So should we receive applications for these properties before we come back to you in September, we will include those on the bylaw for council's consideration. And there were also 3 properties that will be removed as they're no longer occupying at the site. So we have Mid-Island Abilities and Independent Living Society, the Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization Society, and the Society of Equity, Inclusion, and Advocacy. So staff are here to seek council's direction on these recommendations, as well as answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you, if I may. Appreciate the report. A number of years ago, when this was under the bailiwick of council members, I sat on the committee overseeing permissive tax exemptions, and I know the value they bring to our community. What I have forgotten, Ms. Mercer, and maybe you can give me just a ballpark figure, is the total value, dollar amount, that the city gives out in terms of tax exemptions. Sorry to put you on the spot, just give me a rough estimate.
I'm going to hand it over to Anna, because she will have those numbers right at her fingertips.
Ms. Francisco, good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. The estimated value is about $2.4 million for about 170 properties that are currently exempt.
Thank you very much. $2.4 million that the city is providing primarily to nonprofit organizations that provide services that benefit our community, and I think that deserves to be noted. And I think they are extremely valuable to our community and very worthwhile to the organizations that receive them. So I also know that there are strict guidelines and criteria that have to be followed, and appreciate staff's diligence in making sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. I guess I was just a little surprised to see the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board as an applicant for a permissive tax exemption. In my understanding, it's an association of realtors, and and they've lobbied council, and they provide professional oversight and guidance. But I just curious. Our criteria for selecting it, I was just surprised that, one, the need for public subsidy for the association, the building, and just looking at their membership dues and what it would cost. Is there any consideration of financial need, and also just the eligibility? Because I'm surprised and that there was a need from the association for a permissive tax exemption. Thank you.
Ms. Francisco, please.
Through your worship, we don't look specifically at financial need, and one of the reasons for that is because it's really hard to compare apples to apples. Sometimes we've got large national organizations, sometimes we just have local charities. So the guideline includes registered nonprofit status and charity status, adherence to city policies, and of course overall community benefit. So within the guideline in the policy, the real estate board does meet the criteria.
Okay, yeah, I think that, I think it looks like there's quite a broad, what community benefit is, and no doubt there's great work that's done there, and I think just looking at the need and also the amount of subsidy that we do provide, I'm struggling a little bit with that, but I guess I'll save that for the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no, Councillor Manley?
Yeah, I'm just, I have some concerns around Tillicum-Lalem Aboriginal Friendship Centre not being included in this list, and I would note that in their application they identify that they have applied for funding. BC Housing has abandoned a whole bunch of organizations. They've abandoned a whole bunch of people. This is a really important agency that looks out for people on, looks out for Indigenous youth. In this case, Indigenous young women between the ages of 17 and 29 who've experienced violence, and they're trying to, some of whom are trying to regain and retain legal custody of their children. I understand we have rules that they have to have active funding or operating agreement with BC Housing or another government agency, but I just feel like the BC government is abandoning organizations at this time, and I'd hate to see an organization like this be punished because of it. And in their application, they do identify that this is the case. So I would like to see us make an exception to the rule in this particular case. I know Tillicum-Lalem has a youth safe house. They have youth and elder housing. They've got great projects. They've got housing for young moms, and now this housing, I think, should be included in this tax exemption process. So if we're going to have a motion, or maybe staff can weigh in on this, but I might ask for an exemption in the motion. Thank you.
Through your worship, Councillor Manley, if we might let Ms. Mercer speak to some of the unintended consequences. You do have the discretion to amend anything you like within your policy, and staff did evaluate Tillicum-Lalem's based on the policy, but maybe Ms. Mercer might like a few moments to outline some of the implications, and then you can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Manley. So I think it was 2 years ago, we had the criteria up in front of council, and that was the decision at that time, was to make the policy the way it is. So since that time, we have turned down other organizations because they didn't meet this criteria. And I can't comment whether they are more worthy or less worthy than this organization, but kind of the unintended consequences is if you do it for this one, I'm going to guess that you're going to have a lineup at the podium for other ones. But that is ultimately council's decision to do that. Staff can add some additional comments to that.
Ms. Bagan.
Through the mayor to Councillor Manley. So I did speak with the applicant today, and as you confirmed, they were not successful in receiving the funding from BC Housing. We did look at, when we amended the policy to include non-market housing, the implications financially for the city to include a broader range of non-market housing, and there were significant financial implications. However, having spoken with the applicant, this is, considerable hardship for them. However, just like I mentioned in the report, there is the option that I did discuss with the applicant that if they are willing to enter into a housing agreement with the city regarding their program that they offer, which will then confirm for the city that they are providing affordable housing for young women, we can then work with BC Assessment to reduce the assessed value of their property as they would be classified as supportive housing, as long as they meet BC Assessment's criteria, and they were open to that option when I spoke with them.
Thank you for that. Would they be able to then come back to us for tax exemption?
I believe that tax exemption would go directly to BC Assessment, and they would be valued at $2. So $1 for the land and $1 for the building, which is actually, from my understanding, better than what we could offer through the permissive tax exemption policy.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate the explanation too. I remember the discussion that there are a lot of housing units around the community. I really understand the work that they're doing at Tillicum Lalem. I appreciate what they do, and I'm happy to hear that staff are working with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks to Councillor Manley for doing that, and if there's no other speakers, I'd like to move the recommendation.
And a seconder, Councillor Eastmere. Any discussion? Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think our policy is just seeing the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board looking for a tax exemption of, for $27,000 and revenues of the association. I'm not entirely clear sort of the scope of a public benefit. I do understand some work that they do, but I also understand that it is advocacy and work for a professional group. And I'm curious, like, if we're so broad that we know the Lawyers Association and the different groups, coming that do provide some professional guidance, but also, it just leads it open to a whole lot of other people applying that may not necessarily meet what I originally thought were the, community service nonprofits. And so I can't support the permissive tax exemption at this time for BIREP, so I'll be voting not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong?
And Seriatim then, so that he can vote for the other two?
We want to vote on everyone separately. Is that the will of council? All right, so in terms of the awarding or the exclusions or both?
The whole motion is on the floor, Your Worship, as far as I understand, so we could go through them seriatim.
All right, so the motion, someone cares to make it, the motion's been made.
Yeah, so you can just...
With respect to the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, all those in favor? Councillor Armstrong, Eastmere, Hemmons, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Perino. Those opposed, Councillor Gesselbrock, Councillor... Vancouver Real Estate Board, that exception. Yeah, it's seriatim, yes. Opposed or in favor? Opposed, and Councillor Manley, motion carries. Thank you. The next is the Nanaimo Youth Services. Well, it's on the floor. Those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And the Fraternal Order of Eagles. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
You don't have to move the rest seriatim if council is in favor of just moving the entirety, or voting on the entirety. It's already been moved.
Are we okay as a group with B? Yes. All those in favor of the exclusion? Thank you. Those opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, staff. Appreciate this. The next is the British Columbia Local Government Climate Action Program Future Funding. Mr. Holm, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just an update and I guess opportunity for council to become aware of and potentially take some advocacy on potential changes to the climate action funding that local governments have received. And I'm going to turn it over to Ting Pan, Manager of Sustainability, to give a brief overview of this. Thank you.
Good evening, welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. The staff has learned that the local government climate action program has not been renewed, and we would like to, recommend council to advocate to the provincial government to maintain this important funding beyond 2027. Mr. Stewart and Ms. Brinkman has done an excellent job summarizing the background of this funding, and so I just want to briefly provide a little bit more context that this local government climate action program, since its inception over the last 5 years, has provided about $1.6 million in funding our climate action. And under its previous program, the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program, or CARIP, it provided the city around $1.4 million. So altogether, the combined total is around $3 million for city's climate actions. And so what really set this program apart is, one, there is no upfront investment to secure the grant. It's an equitable distribution, and that means this is about the only grant that staff doesn't have to invest a lot of time to prepare applications, and it is not a competitive process. So this saves a huge amount of investment on staff resources. And the second of all is it's extremely flexible. It doesn't restrict on your spending, whether it's on capital or on operational expenses, and you can also use it to leverage other external funding. And the local governments are free to spend it as they see fit for their own purposes. So I think to summarize, is really without it continue, it will be placing more burden on city resources to complete future climate action.
Thank you very much.
Question, if I may. Thank you, Your Worship. Very quick question. Appreciate the support. So if I understand this correctly, then all of the funding will be cut. Is that correct? Or am I misreading it? Tell me I'm misreading it, because I want to make sure we still get some funding, especially for the programs that we're doing.
Through Your Worship, so as of now, we don't really know beyond 2027 if there will be any funding coming from this program.
So your idea then is to do advocacy at this stage to have it continue on past 2027? Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation, as I think this is highly needed.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Any discussion? Not surprising. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? I've never seen it controversial to ask the province for money. The next is C, emissions-intensive heavy industry uses. Mr. Holm, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So November of 2025, Council provided direction to staff to report back on options to exclude emissions-intensive heavy industry within the city, specifically identified in the motion were waste-to-energy incinerators, chemical plants, thermal electrical generators, petroleum refineries, and LNG export facilities. Staff has undertaken a review of a number of different factors, including jurisdiction with respect to air quality, so looking at what the city's jurisdictional authority is and that of senior levels of government, looking at a city plan policy related, city plan being the official community plan, zoning bylaw as it applies to the identified uses in the motion. Also a review of business license records to identify whether or not any existing businesses were operating under business license as a principal use, one of the listed uses. So not necessarily, that wouldn't necessarily get at whether or not there were accessory uses that could fit within the definitions, but specifically whether or not any businesses were operating as a principal permitted use. Also undertook a jurisdictional scan, so looking at other local governments and identifying how some of those comparable communities were addressing similar uses through their land use regulatory provisions. So with respect, I'll just quickly highlight some of the findings. So city plan, and just a bit of a context. City plan, the official community plan, has two designations for industry, light industrial lands and then industrial lands. There's a map attached to the report that identifies the designated industrial lands, which are the lands on which the types of uses identified in the motion could be supported. As well, staff looked at 2020 land inventory and capacity analysis that was supporting background work to city plan and supported the land use designations within city plan that were intended to support the city's future industrial land needs. Also looked at, recognizing this is a bit of a dated document, but 2013 Regional District of Nanaimo Industrial Land Supply and Demand study. Also understanding currently that the Regional District of Nanaimo Board is considering potentially terms of reference for undertaking an updated study along the lines of to replace or update the 2013 study looking at industrial and commercial and employment lands more broadly. Understand that's for consideration tomorrow at the RDN board table. As well, we looked at, staff looked at the zoning bylaw, identifying that the I-4, the heavy industrial, and W-4, waterfront 4 zone would support those types of uses, could support those types of uses. Looking at the definition of industry that the city has, it's quite a broad definition. That does allow for some of the what were identified as emissions-intensive heavy industry uses by council in the November 2025 motion. And the jurisdictional scan looked at 11 different jurisdictions, how they regulated these types of uses, and can go into details. Christine Mays, the author of the report, did the research is here. We can talk about specifics if you'd like, but a general trend amongst the jurisdictions was for a broader, more permissive rather than more specific regulation. So actually going sort of in the other direction to more broadly allow for industrial uses. We can touch on some of the details if you'd like. A number of options are presented in the report. I'll just kind of quickly highlight what they are. So option number one would look at prohibiting some of the, a number of the uses, petroleum refinery, LNG export facility, and waste-to-energy facilities as principal uses within the city. Those are identified as, I guess they were identified as clearly likely heavy emissions uses that were, or emissions-intensive uses with very, I guess, less potential for, if council were to take this route, for unintended consequences with respect to some of the other uses. So number one is sort of prohibiting a limited set of the uses identified. Option number two is to bring forward amendments that would prohibit the list of uses identified. So that's waste energy incinerators, chemical plants, thermal electrical generators, petroleum refineries, and LNG export facilities. So to prohibit those as principal permitted uses. There could still be opportunity for accessory use. Some of the industries do have accessory supportive uses that that rely on, that are critical to their operation. Option number three is to look at a comprehensive review of heavy industrial uses through the zoning bylaw update. That would look at potentially a focused review of industrial uses through the zoning bylaw update. Timing could be good with if there is more information coming out of the regional district doing additional studies on regional needs as well. opportunity to engage more fully with, stakeholders and interested parties. Of course, number 4 is, as council is always able to do, is to provide alternative direction. So happy to take questions. Hopefully this provides some information and helps council consider different options. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions for the staff before we get to the delegations? Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. I'm going to refer to, you have table 1 and then 2 paragraphs down. It says the city is currently in the process of reviewing the zoning bylaw as part of their update. And as part of the update, staff will complete a comprehensive review of heavy industrial uses for cities' industrial zones, which will provide an opportunity to review best practices. So why are we doing this now if this review hasn't been completed yet? Because, you know, my concern is there's been no engagement with SFN or industry or Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. Like, I don't have enough information yet to make an informed decision, and then I'll ask a second question after.
I can speak to that through your worship to Councillor Armstrong. So a specific direction from council on emissions intensive heavy industry is what was requested, options to prohibit certain uses that were considered emissions intensive heavy industry. The zoning bylaw would have not necessarily focused on those uses, but as part of the zoning bylaw update, we would look at alignment of industrial uses with city plan, with the OCP.
And follow-up, please. And then my second question's on gasification, which is different than incineration. These conversations are happening with the RDN waste because we know our landfill's going to die out shortly. So how would that impact that? Would gasification fall under incineration, since they're 2 separate things?
I think that would depend on how waste to energy incineration is defined, would be my answer. But it's at this point there's not been a definition hasn't been developed, and that's something that could be considered through engagement with stakeholders like you're suggesting. Thanks.
I'll wait till after the delegations for council discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Manley?
Thank you, Worship. If there was a bylaw change, it wouldn't permanently prohibit any of these uses. It would only require site-specific zoning, which would be staff reports, public hearings, and a vote by council. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, council would have the ability to consider zoning amendments to allow uses site-specifically if they were not permitted within the zoning.
Right. So it just adds a democratic process to these kind of proposals. This bylaw change, it won't affect Harmac Pacific's current operations, would it?
Maybe Ms. Mays can speak to that, but as far as I understand, with respect to principal permitted uses, no. Obviously, if there were, and I'll let Ms. Mays expand on that, but obviously if there were zoning amendment considered, there'd be opportunity for Harmac, and they can provide commentary at any time through council, but if there is a zoning bylaw amendment considered, we'd expect a public hearing process, and there'd be opportunity through that process to get further input on that as well. But Ms. Mays can provide some additional details.
What I'm asking is, it's an existing use, and my understanding is that an existing use cannot be changed through bylaw. It's grandfathered in.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarity, and through your worship to Councillor Manley. So I think you're speaking to protected lawful non-conforming in the event that the bylaw created a lawful non-conforming situation. There are provisions within the Local Government Act to protect those uses continuing. So there are implications there, of course, but there are provisions in the Local Government Act.
Okay, so it wouldn't affect their current uses. And I assume that would also include the biomass cogeneration facility. They use hog fuel, wood waste byproducts, and that would still be considered an accessory use, even if they expanded their biomass cogeneration facility?
Ms. Bays.
Through the chair to Councillor Manley. With respect to Harmac, we have a specific use that's permitted in the I-4 zone, that's wood and paper processing, which is what Harmac would fall under currently. With cogeneration, that is one thing that we identified in the staff report is the challenge with removing it outright as a permitted use is that it wouldn't cover accessory uses. So in the case of Harmac, generating power for other uses, their biomass side. So it is accessory to their wood and paper processing use.
And it's already in operation, so it wouldn't be affected. Would an expansion of that be affected?
Mr. Holm.
Through your worship, provided it wasn't a principal use and it remained an accessory use, then I would say no. A lot of it's going to come down to the details and what their longer term plans are, but if it's an accessory operation to the wooden, what was the definition again, Christine? Thank you, or Ms. Mays. Wood and paper processing, if it's accessory to that, then no, then it wouldn't be impacted if we were thoughtful and careful in the way we defined waste energy, and we were sure not to exclude that use as a cogeneration as an accessory use. Then it could continue as accessory to the wood and paper processing use, but it would not be able to exist as a principal permitted use.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. No further questions for staff at this present time. We do have 6 delegations. They'll each have 5 minutes. When you're introduce yourself for the record when you come to the podium. When there's 1 minute left, I'll advise you of your minute left. And the first delegation is Paul Chapman. Please.
Hello, my name is Paul Chapman. I live in the old city neighborhood in Snuneymuxw Territory. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm going to be speaking about the virtues of site-specific zoning for certain industrial uses that are currently allowed under our zoning bylaw. I think there will be people after me, delegations after me, that will be speaking to some of the real-world impacts and implications of being permissive in what you include in your industrial zoning. So I'm going to just speak about the opportunities that site-specific zoning offers. And I think the primary one is that it allows the voice of community concern through council to be considered for these impactful industries. And when I'm saying impactful, I'm talking about heavy polluting industries. We don't have to reach back that far to remember the concerns around the data center at Wellington. We don't have to reach back that far to remember the community concerns expressed around the possible expansion of industrial zoning in Cable Bay. And we don't even have to reach back that far to remember the community concern around the waste energy facility that was proposed to import waste from Vancouver for power generation. And you know how close, how near that was to becoming part of our airshed in a permanent way. Site-specific zoning isn't a blanket ban on industry. It looks at the costs and benefits. It can require rather than suggest best practices, and it strengthens the social license between the industry and the community. It can be, but it need not necessarily be, an opportunity for council to say no for proponents that don't meet that social license. It doesn't mean you can't consider the industry, it means you must consider the industry. As Councillor Brown and others have previously pointed out, land use is a purview of City Council, and the community voices heard at the incinerator protest and during the data center debate and at the Cable Bay rezoning public hearing support the thoughtful consideration of site-specific zoning. I think that option 4 from the staff report is the best one, and really it's about bringing in elements of the other options to give you a way forward here. So there's the options kind of in 1 and 2 around the removal of certain industries from being permitted, that automatic permission under industrial zoning. And that's really the cautionary principle, as the other element, the element of option 3, where there's a comprehensive review. And through that comprehensive review, you figure out which ones are permanently removed and then become part of site-specific zoning. And if there are ones that are deemed to be not harmful to our airshed, to our watershed, they can go back into the industrial zoning. So I thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. That was very brief. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Thorpe?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Thank you very much. Through you, if I may, Mr. Chapman, thank you. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, because I'm not sure of what I heard, and that was you seem to be recommending option 4.
Mm-hmm.
And option 4 in my agenda simply says that council provides alternate direction.
Yes, so that's why I suggested elements of the other options that would be what that direction to staff would be.
Right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. The next is Erica Frank via Zoom, I understand.
Hi, indeed, yes. I presume I'm audible and visible, yes?
Good evening, Ms. Frank. You are visible and we can hear you. You'll have 5 minutes. If you can introduce yourself for the record, and I'll let you know when there's a minute left. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hello all, I'm Dr. Erica Frank. I'm a professor and physician at UBC, and I'm speaking in support of item 12C to create better accountability and clearer commitment to preserving the substantial lures of Nanaimo's healthy ecosystems. I wear another hat in addition to physician and professor that's useful here too. As an elected city councilor for 6 years at UBC's University Neighborhood Association, I appreciate the needs that you have to balance. I hope to encourage you to move away from the notion of an anything goes heavy industry zone with its assorted toxic gases and effluents from the emissions intense heavy industry that's currently allowed in our bylaws. I came to UBC in 2006 as the Canada Research Chair in Preventive Medicine and Population Health, pleased to be part of BC's extraordinary health promoting ecosystem for both humans and the environment, and that drew me to live on the island and to buy land and plan to settle in Cedar. The remarkable ability we have to live in a well-zoned wilderness at the doorway of a gateway city like Nanaimo. That's why I wanted to live here and contribute to this community. And so I don't want to stand passively by and allow these irreplaceable natural health promoting resources get spoiled by short-sighted policies. I'm a specialist in preventive medicine and was the Canadian Medical Association's 2016 nominee for the director of the World Health Organization, and it's clear to me here locally that if Nanaimo wants to retain and enhance its reputation as a healthy and desirable place to live, that these recommendations that waste to energy incinerators, chemical plants, thermal energy generators, petroleum refineries, and LNG export facilities indeed have little place in such an ecosystem, along with their toxic gases and effluents. In particular, this includes, as is familiar to Council, I imagine by this time, given the many discussions you've had on incineration, products of combustion like VOCs, volatile organic compounds like benzene that cause respiratory and nervous system and renal and hepatic injuries to our lungs, to our livers, to our kidneys, and to our nervous systems, and that are also known carcinogens. The same is true of another product of combustion, dioxins, which are carcinogens as well as endocrine and immune disruptors. And when something as seemingly inert and as innocent as plastics are combusted, the resultant dioxins disperse the landscapes, seascapes, landing on the fruits and vegetables directly, and getting bioconcentrate in the animals that we eat, both the terrestrial ones and the aquatic ones. So I would submit in closing that these recommendations form an extraordinary opportunity to maintain this system, not to discard this chance to keep a truly wild space adjoining a substantial city, a space with environmental health that supports human health. Such preventive medicine opportunities as these are really rare in the world. It's what brought me to Nanaimo and what I think makes it special and attractive and providing extraordinary leadership. And so I encourage the council to support these wise recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you very much. And I just wondered if you could comment on the difference between gasification and incineration in your experience. We see all of Europe and Asia going towards gasification. Is there a big difference, or do you still share the same concerns about gasification as incineration?
That actually is something that I can speak to, having been on City Council at UBC when we allowed the bioresearch, the biofuel research incineration facility and gasification facility to happen at UBC. I was responsible actually for giving the social license to make sure that that was properly monitored. There are different and typically fewer issues with gasification than with incineration, but it is not, it does not allow carte blanche, and the places where it's been used for things like gasification of wood pulp, like happens at UBC and wood chips and waste wood. That's a really clean stream with no plastics in it, for example, that really make me very confident that dioxins, for example, won't be an issue. If you're talking about gasification of less pure waste streams, which this would be obviously, there are quite a number of residual considerations for that as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for that information about gasification and the difference between regular garbage and biomass. I think that's an important distinction. You're a doctor in preventative medicine. That's your area of expertise. Would you say that healthcare is more than just bricks and mortar? It's about the environment that we all live in.
Yeah, at the Cable Bay hearing in April, where I submitted written comments, the representative from Harmac suggested that doctors like me would want to come to Nanaimo to be able to take care of a well-employed population. And having worked in occupational health and safety, I am a whole lot more interested in social determinants of health in this extraordinary ecosystem that we've created and preserved, and ability to have, there's so much emphasis now in preventive medicine on social determinants of health, on environmental health, and Nanaimo really is at such a pivotal place and has such an extraordinary opportunity for leadership that this seems like another place where we could really be a shining star in terms of attracting both humans and retaining an ecosystem with employers that want to provide this health promoting system.
Are you aware of statistics around people who live close to heavy arterial routes, the life expectancy of people who live, perhaps near a freeway, as opposed to those who live farther away from sources of emissions?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide you with explicit data and follow-up if you'd like, but fine particulates such as happen from emissions both from transportation and also from stable sources. Those worsen asthma. Many of these products create ground level ozone, which also worsen asthma, as well as worsening other pulmonary and cardiac conditions too.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And I'm sorry, you're a respiratory specialist. Fair comment, yes? A respiratory specialist?
Am I?
Yes.
No, I'm a board certified specialist in preventive medicine.
Having said that, thank you for confirming. My understanding is among the most significant determinants of health relate to poverty and isolation. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, it's absolutely true, yes.
Thank you very much. Any further questions for the delegation? Not seeing any. Appreciate your attendance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next delegation is Andrew and Alex Hodson-Deggan. Good evening.
Good evening.
Introduce yourself for the record, as usual, please, in 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left. Thank you.
Works. Yeah, okay. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Andrew Deggan. I'm a resident of Gabriola Island. In regards to heavy emitters, burning the truth, heavy air polluting industries. So this is the Burnaby incinerator. It's currently under investigation for allegedly poisoning its neighborhood. Heavy air polluting industries, research has shown that heavy air polluters emit toxic air pollutants, hazardous ash, greenhouse gas emissions, particulate matter, sulfur, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, volatile organic compounds, and heavy metals in spite of modern controls and industry assurances. Heavy air pollutants, many studies and reports highlight the dangers related to toxic air pollutants. I'm not going to read them all for you. You're all literate here. The synergistic effects of heavy air pollutants. Synergism of heavy air pollutants refers to the phenomenon where the combined simultaneous exposure to multiple pollutants such as fine particulate matter, ozone, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides produces adverse health effects and environmental effects that are greater than the sum of their individual damage. This interaction occurs because pollutants can alter atmospheric chemistry, enhance particulate absorption, or trigger shared biological pathways in humans, such as systemic inflammation, oxidative stress, which are more damaging together than in isolation. Synergistic toxicity amplifies health impact, resulting in higher morbidity rates. The sacrifice zone. World Health, British Society, Ecological Medicine, Ecology Ottawa, and many other organizations warn that living near a heavy air polluter like an incinerator is dangerous. The fallout area dependent on prevalent wind direction is called the sacrifice zone. The closer you live to the center, the greater the health hazard. 8 out of 10 ugly industries are located in low-income or marginalized communities. And I would like to point out here that Gabriola Island and Mudge Island are in the immediate sacrifice zone, and there are many hundreds of homes that collect rainwater for their potable drinking supply. The health effects, primary environmental and health impacts of heavy air polluting industries contribute to climate change, if you're looking for funding, degrade air quality, form photochemical smog, as previously mentioned, cause severe health issues, including respiratory diseases, cancers, cardiovascular, and reproductive problems. Now, I'm not going to quote Dr. Ricker here and steal her thunder. She's coming up next. Companies protect shareholders, not public health. The courts globally recognize that citizens have a right to a healthy environment. Worldwide, heavy air polluting companies are facing investigations and lawsuits for failing to meet clean air regulations and for demonstrating disregard for the health and well-being of the surrounding residents and the environment. BC government fails to protect the public, so our local Indigenous maintain that there are serious questions about due diligence, compliance, respect, and basic decency from our leaders, systemic failures by the government and industrial operators that prevent, identify, and address long-standing environmental harm caused by companies that Dew Point dates back more than 40 years, according to Chief Wise, 2026.
1 minute.
Provincial government is responsible for setting limits, but according to the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, the permits issued fail to require continuous testing for heavy metals, dioxins, furans, and cumulative impacts of pollution from heavy air polluting industries. Ugly industries are a liability. I'm going to go fast now. We support the option 2, to prohibit waste-to-energy incinerators, chemical plants, thermal electric generators, petroleum refineries, and LNG export facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Manley?
Thank you. You referenced the incinerator in Burnaby, and do you know how that was determined that they found out about the toxic emissions and the dioxins and furans that were landing in neighbors' yards?
Do I know what they have found out?
Do you know how they found out?
No, not specifically, no. Oh, well, they were collecting samples of roofs, of surrounding roofs, which in consideration of Gabriola Island, where there are many, many hundreds of homes collecting rainwater for their drinking water supply. So if those dioxins end up on their roofs, or the nanoparticulates, you don't even have to drink it, you just have to have a shower to get it absorbed through your skin. So, you know, it's heavy air polluting industries are a danger to our environment and our health.
Sorry, if you wish to speak, please up to the mic.
Oh, I am so sorry. Yes.
Just the two.
The mic.
It's a lot worse when you get two in an area together.
Thank you.
It was actually an independent investigation that found it was not the regulator that found that there was toxic emissions coming from that incinerator in Burnaby. And so the regulator wasn't doing their job. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. The next is Cheryl Bancroft. Ms. Bancroft, I think you've heard the rules. If you'll introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 5 minutes. When there's a minute left, I'll advise you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Pleasure to be here and have a chance to speak with you. I'm here actually to add to what's been already mentioned from previous delegations. What I find is that options 1 through 3, which do address some site-specific requirements, they're missing some pieces. And it's the missing pieces that I want to speak to. What I find is that none of the options first address transparency. We have a particular proponent with an application before you for rezoning, and it's not been disclosed to the public exactly what they intend to do on that property. So I'm asking for transparency in any zoning application. Of course, consultation with SNNAMO. At third, to review what the proponent's water uses will be. We know with climate change that we are going through extraordinary dry spells. Some proponents have licenses for use of water, but that will be affecting the rest of the city as it expands and grows. And so what is there in your policies to review how much water use each industry uses. Proximity to residential areas. So Nanaimo's boundaries are a line on a map. Of course, one in particular that is before you, a rezoning application, does not show the residential lands on the other side of the line in Cedar, in RDN Area A. Now you've identified for industry inappropriate, that is industries that are inappropriate in urban and residential areas. But I don't see that being incorporated into bylaws and policies in rezoning applications. Tree canopy implications. That's been a recent topic for the city. And how does that fit into rezoning applications? The tree canopy, of course, with climate change, this is our source of cooling, but also in some applications it could be diversion of streams and on a property, that streams that feed an adjoining forest. Of course, you know what I'm talking about, the area west of Cable Bay. Currently, the application is to divert water and run it into the ocean. But that will divert streams away from an existing forest. Well, if this forest doesn't have water gravitationally running to it, we won't have a forest. Another implication is marine ecology. And I don't see that showing up in reviews of zoning bylaws. So where does that factor in? So industrial expansion is inevitable. I think we understand that. The Nanaimo Accord speaks to an integrated approach that includes environmental responsibility and the coordinated action for regional prosperity. Yet there's nothing in there that recognizes the environmental community.
Your Worship, sorry to interrupt, but just the delegation should be speaking to the report on the agenda and not any previous rezoning applications.
Yep. So I'm just asking that in the rezone.
Because the public hearing was adjourned but not over. It was recessed, or it's not over, so we can't hear any more talk on that rezoning application. This delegation should be speaking only to the report on the agenda this evening.
Ms. Gurry is quite correct. I've given you enough, I've taken you back, you have a full minute to complete.
My ask is that, like previous candidate had mentioned, option 4, which would be a blending of option 3, which is to do a comprehensive review, and to include industries that are being prohibited, and integrate in the items that I've mentioned to you: consultation, transparency, water use, proximity to residential areas, tree canopy, and marine implications. And that's my ask.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Yes. You had mentioned in your discussion that it was essential to consult with SFN, Nunavut First Nation, on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so the views of the nation should figure, I won't say predominantly, but certainly figure importantly in any discussion council has around these matters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the delegation? Not seeing any. Appreciate your time tonight. The next delegation is Bethany Ricker. Dr. Ricker, I think you've heard the drill. Introduce yourself. You'll have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's a minute left. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Dr. Bethany Ricker, a family physician practicing here in Nanaimo, co-chair of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment of BC, and an executive board director of the Nanaimo Climate Action Hub. I support a transition to limiting some emissions-intensive heavy industries, such as petroleum refineries, LNG export facilities, and waste-to-energy facilities, because of the potential for harmful impacts on health, community, and climate. I want to use the example of Kitimat's LNG export facility to demonstrate the potential for unforeseen harms of emissions-intensive industries on a community. Leakage and flaring of methane produce harmful pollutants like nitrogen and sulfur dioxides, posing particular risk to vulnerable people such as those with lung disease, pregnant people, children, and the elderly. A few months ago, I filled a short-term locum position for a family doctor in Kitimat. Over my few weeks working there, I saw many patients who themselves were concerned that their health was being harmed by air pollutants from the LNG export facility. A father who himself worked within the industry brought in his young daughter with a long-lasting cough, saying maybe her daycare being right under the flare stack could have something to do with this. A normally healthy and active 40-something-year-old woman had been to this clinic a dozen times over the past year with a chronic cough and shortness of breath, undiagnosed after multiple trials of antibiotics, multiple x-rays, a CT scan, and lung function testing. An elderly woman with baseline COPD came in for her puffer refill much too soon, telling me that ever since that smoke started, her breathing had never been easy. These are the lived experiences of people living close to harmful emissions. These are the concerns that local healthcare providers and city decision makers are dealing with. In fact, frontline communities are so concerned about these possible health effects that multiple directly affected municipalities have called for an independent health impacts assessment, including Dawson Creek, Terrace, and Squamish. These air pollutants not only harm our health directly, but also worsen climate change, which itself is the greatest health threat of our century. LNG, primarily methane, is 80 times as potent at greenhouse gas warming than CO2. And multiple studies show that LNG is no better than coal in its total emissions. Some of you on council are concerned that increased regulation will drive away investment in industry, thereby risking increased poverty and poor job opportunities here in Nanaimo. I am in full agreement that poverty is perhaps the single greatest determinant of health. We should not be pitting the environmental and financial determinants of health against one another, but rather these are two compounding risk factors which often affect the same vulnerable populations simultaneously. And this is for multiple reasons. It is more likely for toxic emissions to be created near poorer neighborhoods, or that people with the financial means will move away. And the voices of people with less financial capital are more often overlooked, even if they do have health concerns. Those with minimal savings are more harmed by forced time away from work if they themselves or a loved one are sick. And these effects do not only apply to passive bystanders, but we must strongly consider the health effects on industry workers themselves, those who are often at highest risk, to ensure that they are adequately informed and protected from undue harms.
1 minute.
Climate change itself is also much more harmful to people of lower financial independence. For example, being unable to install appropriate cooling in their homes, or being unable to afford insurance costs as they rise due to risks of flooding and fires. The cost of fresh, healthy food is another example of cost increased by climate change. So yes, both poverty and environmental exposures must be considered when we build industry in our community. And we must ensure that the most vulnerable are not saddled with the harmful consequences of our decisions. I am not against industry. Safe, healthy, stable, and gainful employment is critical for our health and well-being. Although every industry will have some effect on the natural environment and human health, there are ways that much of our industrial development can be made more safe through planning the types of industries, their locations, and their health and safety regulations carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. You're dead on. You must have practiced.
Spoke fast.
Questions? Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you very much, Doctor. My question is going towards LNG. I was doing a lot of research on the Kitimat thing because that's very controversial up there, obviously. And they show that they have a 74% higher rate of asthma. Is that linked directly to the LNG, or could that also be to the aluminum plant, or a combination?
There are many factors, and in Kitimat specifically, they do have a very affected airshed because they have already had Rio Tinto, the Alcan facility there for many years, and they are in a vulnerable airshed with the way their geography is and maintaining those emissions within the atmosphere. So as a specific example, Kitimat is at very high risk because of their airshed due to the combination of Alcan, Rio Tinto activities, plus LNG Canada, and now the potential for expanding to LNG Canada Phase 2 and the floating LNG
And a
facility.
follow-up, if I may, because from reading what I've read, I understand a lot of the issues come at the flare-up times, and the government only keeps the records for 30 days, then they destroy them. So would that make it hard for you to, or any physician or whatever, to trace back? Because would it not be a good recommendation to have those records kept for a lot longer than 30 days?
Oh,
So it can
absolutely.
actually show the proper impact?
Yeah, it's very difficult to make direct connections between outcomes and what their cause is because this is the real world. There are many factors impacting individuals' health, but there have been for sure issues with kind of record keeping, as you said, but also with actual monitoring and regulation. There's been many revealing news stories, studies coming out showing that there have been industrial issues causing flaring to be much higher than the regulated and permitted amount, and also evidence that the kind of permitted amount of flaring is considered on a kind of average operations basis as opposed to during the startup phase, which can actually last for multiple years when flaring and emissions from flaring are actually much higher and those emissions are not being monitored or accounted for in regulating.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounded like you were talking about the synergistic effect of Alcan and combined with LNG in that situation. I'm curious about the situation in Dawson Creek. Are you aware of doctors that have left that community based on concerns about the air quality for their families?
Yeah, absolutely. And you may remember me referencing this in the November meeting. Dawson Creek is centrally located in an area of a high volume of fracking, so obtaining gas from underground using very toxic chemicals. So in that case, yes, potentially air quality because there is flaring involved in the process of fracking as well, but additionally there's huge contamination of the groundwater. There's a lot of carcinogens getting into the groundwater, and as I spoke to last time I was here at the November meeting, one of my colleagues, Dr. Meyer, who has been practicing in Dawson Creek for the past 30 years, has truly alarming stories that even as a healthcare professional, your jaw drops thinking, how could there be this many glioblastoma brain tumors in people in their 20s and 30s? We never see those here in Nanaimo. Or how could there be this many childhood leukemias in a small community in Dawson Creek? So once again, things that are hard to gather very granular evidence-based data on, but the known carcinogens are there and the cancer diagnoses are there.
And so you referenced Dawson Creek and Terrace for studies. Are those being done by the regulator or are those called for by independent researchers?
Yeah, the communities that have passed these motions are calling on the province to require an independent body to assess the health impacts of the natural gas industry.
And in the case of Kitimat, it was an independent researcher who discovered that the emissions were 40 times, I think, the allowable limit.
Correct.
And what did the regulator do about that, the province?
From my understanding, there was industrial kind of concerns, like this was not supposed to be happening. This was due to malfunctioning of some usual operations at the facility. I can't speak further to that. I don't want to give any false information about what was or was not done. However, it was revealed that the company itself, LNG Canada, was aware that their emissions were much higher than the permissible regulations allowed, and that they did not disclose this to the regulator for months as they tried to get that back under control.
process of self-regulation. Do you know how many doctors left Dawson Creek?
I don't know specifically, and there is a lot of course, difficulty for people to speak out publicly about this because these are their communities and their loved ones and their friends. But it's a small community, right? So from the hearsay reports that I have heard, it's somewhere a third to a half of the doctors in this small community over a period of several years moved their practices and moved away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions. Appreciate the presentation. Councillor Armstrong? Oh, sorry, pardon me. Curly Park, how could I forget? Sorry, don't be hurt.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Curly Park. I'm a respirologist and I practice in Nanaimo. I just wanted to take a brief moment to speak about the effects of air quality on public health and to say that I think it's imperative that decisions about industrial developments in Nanaimo be made not just based on economic factors, but based on potential consequences in terms of local public health outcomes. It's well documented that air pollution, and I know this has been touched on quite a few times already, but just briefly to say, especially fine particulate matter in the environment poses a major public health risk, including increased mortality and hospitalizations for cardiorespiratory causes. To quote a report published by the Canadian government in 2021, in Canada and internationally, health impact assessments identify air quality as one of the largest risk factors for premature death and disability. It's estimated that in 2016, air pollution contributed to more than 15,000 premature deaths in Canada and almost 2,000 in British Columbia. In that year, the total economic cost of all health impacts attributable to air pollution was $120 billion, and that was a decade ago. I'm concerned about industrial developments in Nanaimo that could worsen air quality, because whenever air quality goes down, it impacts the health of our citizens, and I see that all the time in my practice. The lens through which we examine new industrial developments proposals at a local level needs to include a public health perspective. I know that there are federal and provincial regulations for industrial emissions, but we know and we've heard that they're not always adhered to. I think that any new proposals in this regard should be closely scrutinized at the municipal level with public awareness and with input from local health officials and providers in order to safeguard the well-being of our citizens in Nanaimo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. I'm just curious, and I wanted to ask the same question to other presenters, but is there any localized data based on the impact of existing industry on things like respiratory health and things like that?
Not that I'm aware of. There's some BC-specific data, and there are some studies in certain areas in Vancouver about markers of air quality and health outcomes next to very busy arterial routes like traffic routes, but I don't know of any in Nanaimo.
Right, and just one other question, and if you don't have the answer, I know it's off the cuff here. So is there research out there about the impacts of, say, like automobile use and obviously it's pretty known, the pollution causing in comparison to industry, especially in some of the other areas referenced, like what's the ratio of damage? And I know that can be hard, but I'm just curious if that comparative analysis is out there.
I think, I don't know that they've been able to tease out specific in sort of like traffic versus industry, emissions from industry. Although again, the study that I was talking about for Vancouver, they were taking samples and trying to trace back sort of where the different particulate matter came from. But again, that's sort of somewhere that was really close to a very busy highway, and so of course a lot of it was traffic. So absolutely, pollution from traffic plays a big role, as do wildfires. But yeah, the emissions from heavy industry certainly play a role.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Oh no, that's for after, sorry. Like I know we've got four different options on the table. One of my concerns that I would like to see before we make a decision, I just throw that out, is I would like to see engagement with Snamo First Nation before we even look at any determinations and better definitions. Like, I think everybody knows my position. I think we need to look at gasification as an option. That's why I was asking the questions. And people, I think, quite often mix up incineration with gasification, and I think biomass is nothing, like we said. Like, I just don't have enough information yet. Like, I agree, like, I think LNG is dangerous. You know, like, from the research I've done, I think that, and petroleum, another, you know, concern I do have as well. But I don't think there's enough information to make an informed decision right now. I'd like to hear more from that. You know, when we talk about community consultation, I think it's very important that we hear from some of the doctors that spoke as well, so they can provide their perspective for preventive medicine. I think it's important that we hear the economic benefits versus that, all of that, because this is a big decision to make. I do understand site-specific, but my issue with site-specific is it's time-consuming, cost a lot of money if we don't get more information. Like, I was looking at number 3, but part of me would like to make a motion to defer the decision until the engagement with SFN and Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation, which was part of the original motion put in by Councillor Hemmons, be conducted and then be brought back to us after that conversation takes place, because we have had conversations with SFN around industrial lands, especially when we're looking at Duke Point area and all the rezones and stuff. So I just throw that out for consideration. Thank you.
Sorry, are you moving a motion to defer? Thank you, and Councillor Hemmons seconds. All right, Councillor Hemmons?
So, Your Worship, with a motion on the floor, we should deal with the motion first and then have the break after.
I'll ask Councillor Hemmons to speak slowly.
So speaking in support of deferral, I think it's essential that we get the nation's perspective on this, as well as when we had this initial debate, I did ask staff to get Prosperity's take on this as our economic development agency. I would like to hear from them. So for me, I support the deferral to listen to those two partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, go slow.
Yeah, no worries. So just to be clear, the deferral, I'm not clear on what we've actually, like, we've deferred it to have conversations with SFN and
My mic goes on. And then bring it back to council for the decision as to which options we want to look at. Because I think it's important that we hear SFN's perspective on these lands, because we do know a lot of those areas are impacted by some of their hereditary and cultural stuff, and they haven't been consulted on this yet. So I would like to hear from them. That's just my personal viewpoint, and also ENPC as to the impacts, and then have another report come back to us. It's just something I throw out before I make the big decision on yes or no. Or
So, Your Worship, just to clarify, it would be the same report and these same options coming back before you after engagement with SFN and Nanaimo Prosperity.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak to that then, Your Worship, if I may. I can definitely support the first half of that. To me, the NPC makes no sense. They're an advocacy body that coordinates and convenes meetings with economic players. Could care less what they have to say about it. I would rather speak to the industry itself, especially those property owners that are actively have active industrial operations or are planning active industrial operations on those properties. That's what makes sense to me. And then I also think that, that's an economic perspective, absolutely needs to be balanced by a health perspective. And I note that you mentioned doctors and relevant agencies within your comments, but it's not within the motion. So to that end, and then I would just say, I think there's a third component there that I think is missing, and that would be, and I don't know where the appropriate place would be to receive comment from, potentially ministries or whatnot, but there's an environmental component that would be absent as well, because I don't think the decision is just economy versus the environment or economy versus the health. I think what Councillor Armstrong, and I don't want to speak for you, is trying to get at is that we actually need a very informed discussion with the balanced perspectives at this table before proceeding with one option or the other. But, so as the motion stands now, I couldn't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Himmons, then Councillor Manley, and then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I will be supporting the motion, although I guess I feel I would prefer that it was less restrictive. I was very concerned when I read in the report, and I highlighted it, that, and I quote, "no engagement has taken place at this time." And I'm not blaming staff because I know they were hurrying to get this report back to us as directed. But I think the more communication and engagement, the better, certainly with SFN. I want to hear what the Prosperity Corporation has to say, and absolutely what the industries that are going to be affected potentially have to say as well. So I think there's a lot of engagement that needs to happen, and I am not comfortable making a decision on this until that engagement has taken place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Worship. I've already spoken, but I wanted to address Councillor Brown's comments. I actually find it a little rude to say that we don't care about prosperity or you don't. That's the organization that Council has funded to give us expert advice on the development of the economy in Nanaimo. And we had a really great presentation from someone who's working very closely with prosperity, and I think they're doing really great work. So I just found that a little out of line, and I wanted to say that. I think Prosperity is the right person or the right organization because they have VIU at the table. They have the port at the table. They have the airport at the table. So in terms of bringing perspectives of industrial players, absolutely, they can go and get specifics, but I think they represent our economic partners really well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you. The Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation has already identified priority sectors, and emissions-intense heavy industry is not one of them. They've identified marine and blue economy, clean tech and sustainability, and advanced manufacturing and industrial tech. I think the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation is already on the path to where this community should be going. And so, you know, we had that presentation on foreign direct investment. I wasn't in attendance on that day, but I did meet with Mr. Stansfield and went over the presentation with him. In terms of Nanaimo, they've been very clear. They want to be consulted when there are proposals for rezoning, and in particular anything that's going to create additional pollution in their territory. And so the only way that that can happen is by creating site-specific zoning. Right now, a proponent could come in, an international organization could come in, buy land, get a development permit for building an incinerator, and there would be no requirement for consultation, not with City Council and not with Nanaimo First Nation. And in fact, we might be bound by international trade agreements to watch that proposal get built and, you know, have a company like Wheelbrader importing garbage from Oregon, Washington State, because we do have an international agreement with the United States on the transfer of hazardous waste. It's the Canada-US agreement on transboundary movement of hazardous waste. And Oregon and Washington are closing incinerators. So we could become the garbage dump of the Pacific Northwest without so much as a public hearing or any consultation with Nanaimo. So this is the route for consultation with Nanaimo. This is how they would have a voice in anything that happens, and they've been very clear with us. I think that the letter that they sent on April 7th was very clear that they want input on industrial activity within their territory that adds any additional pollution in our territory. I don't know of other bylaws where we have gone to consult with Nanaimo on changes to our bylaws, but maybe somebody could educate me about that. But I don't support a deferral at this time, so I'll be voting against it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I don't support the deferral. Main reason, I think some of the options provided, there's been such clear feedback from the community on certain heavy emitting producing industries that we could make a decision on a couple things. For example, petroleum refineries and LNG export facilities. That's a pretty easy decision to make to prohibit that, and just in a sense ask that if something came forward like that, it'd have to go to public hearing. I think also the question of municipal waste to energy, that's one that's even in our regional district solid waste management plan that we don't support that. That's something that we could easily go ahead with now. We know in 2014 there was a huge amount of public protests that shut down a proposal that didn't need to go to public hearing right into the province and got the council involved. So let's just close the door on that they didn't quite close on 2014. And then, so option one for me is something that we could easily do tonight, and we don't need to defer to later. I think that's a very balanced approach because chemical plants, immediately going ahead with prohibiting that, and thermal electrical generators, there's a lot of nuance there, and there's some things that are very aligned with what this council wants to do that we would be closing the door on, which we shouldn't, and our zoning bylaw lacks the nuance and the specificity to actually have a good process in place of what should go to public hearing. And that's why I agree with having greater engagement with SFN and with the community on reviewing our heavy industrial allowable uses and amending our zoning bylaw. And option 3 says direct staff to complete a comprehensive review of heavy industrial uses for the city's industrial zones as part of the zoning bylaw update project. That would be a great public process to go through and having a very close look at our heavy industrial uses and what we want to prohibit and ensure goes to public hearing, or one that we can allow in a permissive use. And so I think going forward tonight with option 1 and option 3 would, one, do the no-brainers that we don't really need to go out for continued engagement on, and then allow for a public process and engagement on reviewing the other industrial uses and the definitions through a review of our heavy industrial uses. That would be making a decision on this item as opposed to prolonging the inevitable, because I know where the community stands on these issues, and if some proposal was put forward that was heavy industrial use and proven emission, there'd be a hue and cry, and we'd have to have a filled up gallery and spend nights and nights and nights of hearing why the public wants greater public oversight on heavy industrial uses and heavy emitting industries. So I'm definitely not in support of deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. My purpose for going to SFN first is I want to do it before it goes to public hearing. I think it's important that they be given as a government to government, that we speak with them first. The reason I included NPC, because that was part of the original motion. That Councillor Hemmons was told that would happen, that didn't happen. So we're not getting a report that was requested by council at the time. I agree, like my other concern, which I've shared before, and it's been talked about at the regional district with I can't remember Ben's last name, they are looking at gasification because we don't have the land. So that is being looked at. Many First Nations are being involved. I'll use Tsleil-Waututh, who have just struck a partnership with, I can't remember the name of the group in Vancouver, to do huge gasification because it's renewable and they consider it green fuel. So that's my concern, the difference between gasification and incineration. They're quite different. And I think it's important because, in exactly what you said, Councillor Manley, SFN may come back and say, yes, we support site-specific zoning. I want to hear that from them, and we're okay to go to public hearing on every one of these. Or they may come back and say, you know what? We don't want site-specific on these, we want them gone, period. You know, so I would like to have that information before we get to a bylaw or whatever. And my other concern is, and I don't know how this will play with the government, when we have a minister telling us to stay in our own lane when we do this previously, which is concerning because these bylaws have to go to them for approval, right? So I just believe it's better to engage with SFN from the start instead of waiting until we're already at a motion where we're going to rezone or we're going to do this, and they haven't even had a chance to weigh in yet. That's just my personal viewpoint. I prefer to consult first and then do it after. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be voting in favor of deferral, and the reason for me is I think there's no one at this table, in fact, no one in this region who wants to see unhealthy emissions. Nobody does. But the important part is that this is about industry, and we do need to speak to SFN, we do need to speak to the industries, we do need to speak to our NPC. We need to have as much information as we can to make the best decisions possible before we go to rezoning. That would be my preference always. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I wish that the motion said speak to industries as well as SFN. I wish we could put that in as a friendly amendment. I'll just put that out there. I think that it would be smarter to include those that are the most affected by this and to get their expertise on what we are or are not doing. So that would be my preference, and definitely for deferral.
Thank you. I'm reminded of the saying in the Indigenous community, nothing about us without us. Council received a letter, July 22nd, sent on Sunday night, the 26th, from the Port of Nanaimo, signed by Donna Hayes, and from a joint letter from Sinamic First Nation, signed by Chief Mike Wise, a long request for the City of Nanaimo, along with others, to participate in a strategic economic roundtable involving numerous partners, including, as they said, Transport Canada, Industry Canada, Housing Infrastructure Canada, Crown Indigenous Relations Canada, National Defence Canada, Sinamic, and Nanaimo Port Authority, DP World, British Columbia Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure, Jobs and Economic Growth, relevant shippers, etc., etc. Councillor Manley will be the first to acknowledge that he then wrote, in response to that, a short letter asking, pardon me, it was then followed up tonight, by a letter from Councillor Joseph, designated under the terms of the letter from Sinamic and the Port, saying it's come to Sinamic's attention that on July 27, 2026, Mayor and Council are considering options to amend the City of Bylaw, Nanaimo Bylaw 2011 number 4500, related to emissions-intensive heavy industrial uses, etc. We remind Mayor and Council that we address the issue of municipal governance related to emissions-intensive industry in our letters of April 7th. In that letter, we explained how every industrial activity is of particular concern, etc. Since that letter, we have not been engaged in specific proposed zoning, bylaw amendments, or more generally on establishing a framework for emissions, etc. So, asking us essentially to not deal with this without further consultation, I think that is fairly clear. We know that the Port Authority, a major economic driver and employer through the industries that are located there, has not been consulted. With respect, I won't be quite as harsh perhaps as Councillor Hemmons, but we fund the Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation for obvious reasons. I have to ask, what's the hurry here? I don't think anyone's going to build a liquid natural gas plant in Nanaimo in the next few months or propose it. I don't think we're going to see any of those things. What I do hear is that the Sinamic First Nation, who we've just taken an enormous step down the road, as I reminded everyone tonight, towards reconciliation by ensuring they'll actually have the right to vote for mayor and council of this city, with whom they have been working diligently in the last several years with the Protocol Agreement Working Group, have basically said, hold your horses, folks. Could you please consult with us, not do anything further for the time being? That would be enough for me, let alone the need to consult with the Port Authority and the community generally. We also have finally, and this will not please some folks because they seem to have become the whipping boy in the community around heavy industry, but a letter from Mr. Sadler on behalf of the Nanaimo Forest Products saying, as did everybody else in the community, just saw the report that was prepared by staff, which we received just last week in accordance with the agenda like everybody else, saying thank you for the opportunity to review and provide preliminary comments on the City of Nanaimo Planning Department's emissions intensive heavy industry uses report to Council in advance of the July 27, 2026 special council meeting. That's dated July 24th. That's when it's public for everybody. We ask that prior to Council adopting any of the options presented in the report, that staff and Council invite all I-4 landowners to participate in a thorough consultation to review the current uses and the impacts of proposed restrictions on existing businesses and future plans for those businesses. Because this isn't just about today, about existing industry. This is about what the community's future might look like. And with respect, it's becoming pretty obvious, I would hope, in this community, given the protests around taxation levels, that if you don't have an industrial base, then you have to tax residential owners more to pay for what everyone wants and seems to regard as important. I was much moved by the honest response around poverty and isolation being significant contributors to the health of the community and its citizens. So, unless someone can convince me, and I doubt very much they're going to, for you can tell from the tone of my voice, that there is no necessity to do this tonight. Deferral is the appropriate thing. Process is important. It is the way our society operates. I'm going to support the motion to defer until there's been further community consultation. I'm not about to participate in creating a controversy tonight by trying to pass a motion that'll simply further divide this community. We've already had enough submissions in the last few months about various attitudes about heavy industry and employment and the economy. I think it's time for us to take a step back, defer this, discuss it, get staff to do their work, listen to the public, give the public a full opportunity to be heard. It strikes me as logical. Never hurts to listen. It does not always pay, however, just to talk. So, the motion's on the floor to defer. All those in favor, Councillors Armstrong, Eastmere, Hemmens, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Perino, and those opposed, Councillors Gesselbrock, Brown, and Manley. This matter is deferred. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now we can have an evening break and staff can get a bit of a rest. That's what counts. On to item 12. Pardon me, 12D. And Ms. Mercer, you're responsible for the quarterly purchase
Your Worship.
report.
Sorry, were we going to move up the other business item to be next?
Oh, yes, pardon me, yes.
Sorry
Can
about
we
that.
bring forward, please, Councillor Eastmere's motion, read the Lost Intersections Public Art Installations. We do have a delegation. I don't think the poor person should have to sit here all night. Very wisely, thank you. Unless someone objects mightily. So, Councillor Eastmere, it's your motion. 17B.
Thank you. So the motion is that council direct staff to prepare a report identifying the process and estimated costs to acquire the 3 Lost Intersections temporary public art installations by Jackie Wong for inclusion in the city's permanent public art collection as a lasting recognition of Nanaimo's Chinese-Canadian heritage, including the purchase of the artwork from the artist, permanent installation requirements at all 3 installation sites, and ongoing operating and capital costs for inspection, maintenance, repair, replacement, and long-term stewardship.
Ms. Gurry, do we have to have it seconded first before I invite the delegation?
No, actually, so we will have the delegation speak before you debate the...
Good, everyone knows what we're talking about. It's Amélie Guélan-Sue. Am I pronouncing it correctly, I hope? Very good. Come to the mic, please. If you could just introduce yourself formally for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. When there's a minute left, I'll let you know. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me this opportunity today. My name is Guélan-Sue, and I also go by Emily. I hold a master's degree in Media and Cultural Studies in Lancaster University from the UK, and I'm a relatively new immigrant from China, and Nanaimo has become my new home. When I first arrived here, I noted that the Nanaimo's public spaces reflected the history of European settlement, alongside the rich and visible history and culture of the Nanaimo's First Nation. What surprised me was how little I saw the Chinese community that also helped build Nanaimo. That changed when I visited the Chinatown exhibition and learned about the city's Chinese history. As I learned more about the Nanaimo's history, I realized that Chinese people were not a small footnote in the city's past. They helped build its economy foundations. They worked in the coal mines, helped build the railway, supported the harbor economy, operated laundries and small businesses, and supplies food through market gardens. Their labor helped shape the Nanaimo we know today. I also learned about the tragic 1887 mine explosion where 150 miners lost their lives. More than 1/3 of them who died, which is 53 miners, were Chinese. What struck me most was that many of the Chinese victims were recorded only by payroll numbers instead of their names. That detail stayed with me. It reminded me that while Chinese workers helped build these cities, they were not always recognized as equal members of it. I also learned about decades of discrimination, from the head tax to the Chinese Exclusion Act, and how Chinese communities faced exclusion, isolation, and repeated displacements. I don't share this history to assign blame. We cannot change what happened, but we can choose how we acknowledge it today. To me, preserving lost intersections is one meaningful way of giving greater visibility to people whose contributions helped build Nanaimo, but whose stories have not always been seen. Canada has taken important steps towards acknowledging difficult parts of its history and working towards reconciliation. I believe recognizing the history of Chinese Canadian is part of the same commitment, to remember those whose contributions were overlooked, and to ensure that our public spaces reflect the full story of our community. I respectfully encourage Council to support exploring the acquisition of these artworks as a permanent part of Nanaimo's public landscapes. I also hope that this is only the beginning. I hope we continue to see more public art that tells the story of Chinese Canadians as well as other communities whose contributions have helped shape Nanaimo. Thank you very much for your time and considerations.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the delegation?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming to share your perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Eastermere, you're moving your motion.
I am moving my motion.
And we have a seconder in Councillor Armstrong. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Eastermere?
I would love to. Yes, thank you. So Lost Intersections by artist Jackie Wong is a public art project that highlights an often overlooked part of our history. And I'm not sure if everyone has had a chance to see these installations yet, but they are 3 neon installations that are placed at historical intersections, and they mark the former sites of Nanaimo's 3 Chinatowns, which were once vibrant centers of community culture and resilience for Chinese immigrants. The first one was at Esplanade in Victoria from the 1860s to 1884. The second was at View Street and Bing Key Street from 1884 to 1908. And the third at Pine Street and Hecate from 1908 to the 1960s was said to have a population of about 1,200 people at the height of its existence before it was also destroyed by fire. And in speaking with members of the Chinese community here in Nanaimo, there's obviously and understandably a very strong desire to better recognize the history and the many contributions of the Chinese immigrants and Chinese community here in Nanaimo since the 1860s, and at one time Nanaimo had the 3rd largest Chinatown in all of BC. And in addition to refurbishing the townsite Chinese cemetery, which is a priority, I'm hearing a shared desire from amongst many Chinese community groups in Nanaimo, including the Nanaimo Chinese Cultural Society and Nanaimo Chinese Freemasons and historical experts, including Dr. Imogene Lim, and community advocates to make the Lost Intersections pieces permanent. And as chair of the city's advisory committee on accessibility and inclusiveness, I see a recognition of the contributions of Chinese immigrants as part of the inclusiveness aspect of my commitment to this work. And these installations are small, but they're bright, they're beautiful, and I think they're really important markers where there has been no recognition before, and I don't want to lose these formerly lost intersections when the temporary art contract expires, and I think they really present an excellent jumping off point to build from. I would love to lock these in sooner rather than later so that we have something permanent. And these can act as anchors in these locations, so we can add to these areas with more placemaking elements, including informational plaques or educational installations to better recognize and celebrate the vital contributions of the Chinese community here in Nanaimo.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Perino.
Thank you. Just, I wanted to thank Councillor Eastmere on behalf of the Chinese Cultural Society, who reached out to say they were very thankful for making this motion, and they're very appreciative and hope it passes. So on behalf of them, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very quick question. So I understand that we are asking staff to prepare a report about the 3 different art installations and the costs with them. Any idea when we'll get that report back?
Ms. Vogelsing.
Through your worship to Councillor Perino, we'll do our best to get it back to you as soon as possible. Obviously, we have a big break before.
Right, I know.
But our aim will be to get back to you as soon as we can with the numbers, so you have an understanding of the costs.
Great, thank you. I'm thinking too of the budget, so yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. If this motion does not pass or this motion did not exist, when would the art installation be coming down?
Through your worship to Councillor Hemmons, I would have to check. It looks like maybe Councillor Eastmere might have the answer for us.
Councillor Eastmere.
They are, initially it was a 5-year contract, and with art pieces like this, after that contract is up, then there's an opportunity for the city to explore with the artist potentially acquiring the artwork if the artist is interested. I've spoken to the artist. They're actually very interested in the city acquiring it sooner than that. And in terms of ongoing maintenance, these pieces are built in a pretty robust way, and they are powered with solar panels. And so they are built to last and have good potential to become permanent pieces.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer there. When are they expected? 5 years from? So they were installed in February of this year. Typically, after 5 years, we have the opportunity to purchase, but we're looking to purchase now. Okay.
Through your worship to council, we can come back with options on that.
Okay. Have we ever purchased any of the public art installations before? Maybe the
Through your worship to council, we have, and I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, it's okay. As long as it's included in the report, I just want the whole context.
Yes. It hasn't been frequent, but we have acquired some of the pieces over the years.
Okay. Thank you. I love this installation. I think it's a really beautiful, simple mark to our complex history. My questions, however, are based upon just the process here and understanding, you know, should we wait 4 years and then purchase it? Like, so I'm happy to get the report. I support it. I love the installation, and I'm looking forward to getting the report so I can weigh it out a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Motion's on the table. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Back to development reports. Back to the quarterly purchasing report, single and sole source purchase, quarterly purchasing report, single and sole source purchase in excess of $250,000, and there's 3 of them, and Ms. Mercer, you're going to do it all at once, right? Bless you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I will, as all the reports are the same, just for 3 different quarters. So per the city's procurement policy, this report provides the committee with information on those sole source, single submission purchases, and policy compliance for October to December 2025, January to March 2026, and April to June 2026. In each report, Attachment 1 outlines the sole and single source purchases, Attachment 2 outlines purchases over $250,000, and there were no instances of non-compliant with the procurement policy in any of those reporting periods. So staff are here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Mercer? Not seeing any. We're driving staff too hard. Thank you very much. And it's the quarterly purchasing report, single purchase excess of 200, hang on, and instances of exceptions to trade, oh no, you've covered that as well, sorry. We're cutting out poor Mr. Holm. I just felt badly, sorry. Next is 13 development reports. First is development variance permit application number DVP 495-1451 Belford Avenue. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to development variance permit application number DVP 495-1451 Belford Avenue? I'm not seeing any. There's a recommended motion. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is rezoning application number RA 509-2080 and 2160 East Wellington Road. We do have a presentation. Mr. Holland, looks like you've been left alone tonight. Your cohorts have wisely gone home to bed, which is where I'd like to be.
I think we have one online, Your Worship.
Oh,
as
goodness.
well. Yes.
Be still my beating heart. And who have we got online?
We have the.
It's Glenn Pro from Highland Properties.
Very good. Nice to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship Council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Mark Holland. I'm with West Plan. We're planners that are supporting the landowner through this process. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening. We've been working on this project for many years. This has been quite a process. The environment has figured very, very strongly and prominently in this process that brings us here today for first and second reading. We've done quite a few technical studies, and we've had community engagement, and a good focus of what I want to speak about are the things that the community spoke about that they were concerned about, not dissimilar from what we've heard earlier today. The site is a 25-hectare site that we're all familiar with in terms of its trees. This is between East Wellington, the overpass over the Parkway, and Northfield, where the tourist center is, minus one small property around the tourist center. So it's that large area of trees back there. Your OCP has the whole area designated for light industrial, and at this point, I'd just like to go on the record, since we're using the word industry after tonight. This is specifically not the type of industry that we have spent quite a bit of this evening speaking about. In fact, all of the heavy industry, all of the emitting uses are outright completely prohibited in this area. This is a light industry conversation, very, very similar to what you find in Boxwood. So in some ways you can imagine this as twinning Boxwood on the other side of the Parkway. The site is entirely undeveloped right now. Two of the key issues that were raised by the community when we met with them, and really the two primary ones, environmental protection and transportation mobility. So I'd like to speak to both of those. The environment figured prominently. It was the first studies we did. In fact, we had about a 6-month delay on the project because we needed to wait for precisely the right weather. It wasn't just the season. We had to wait for the right weather before we did the environmental and riparian study. So it was the qualified environmental professionals, we waited till they said we could go out and do this. I'm pleased to note at the outset that over 50% of this site will be protected as environmental or park or open space. It's very rare that I've ever been at a microphone being able to talk about an industrial project and say half of it will be protected as park or open space. Furthermore, we're at a rezoning level here, so the many steps ahead before anything could be built. Next step would be subdivision to begin to create some specific parcels, and then development permits. Further environmental work will be done on every parcel before this thing moves forward. So there are many checks and balances ahead to look after the community's commitments to environment while we pursue the economic and employment goals that are in the OCP. Finally, on that point, the 15-meter buffer along the highway will be protected because we all love that sort of rural feel through that strip. And in fact, most of the riparian and environmental protection areas are also in that area. So when you're on the highway, even though the employment area will have gone in, there's going to be a very, very deep, dense area there of the environment that will continue to maintain that beautiful view that you see when you look west. The project is structured from the second point of view around mobility. This project contributes a major step to a future important link between East Wellington Road and Northfield Road. There's one piece of land that is not owned by this landowner and is therefore not part of this that would be the final missing link right now where the tourist center is. But this road will be constructed to be part of that future link that provides a lot more mobility on that side of the highway, which right now has sort of few north-south linkages in it. The project is also going to contribute very significantly to upgrades along East Wellington. Intersection upgrades, a major amount of money, frontages, et cetera, will all be part of this process. The project is obviously focused on employment, and this is one of the conversations you had earlier this evening, in the trade-off between environment and economy under certain circumstances. Working with staff here, we've been pleased that they're quite supportive of 2, even 3 stories in this area, since your OCP capacity envisioned this all for industry, but we're protecting half of it for the environment. So staff have been working with us in this zone to allow more density and more things on the upper level floors, a little more flexibility in the accessory uses. There will be no sacrifice of the industrial at the ground plane. This preserves the integrity of your commitment to light industry here, but they'll allow a higher level of office uses or food services or things on upper floors so as not to compromise the industrial foundation of the project, but in order to achieve your employment goals of higher intensity employment in the area. Finally, the landowner has agreed to contribute a very significant amount of money in community amenity charges. It could be as high, we don't know until the actual specific developments happen, because that happens at building permit, but it could be as high as well over $1 million. And I'm pleased to say the agreement is to commit that equally between the 2 primary concerns of the community: mobility and parks and open space. So this will bring additional funds and money there. So in closing, I'm pleased to be able to bring this forward to you for first and second reading. An area here that will provide significant employment, protect over 50% of the site for the environment, contribute to major important mobility infrastructure for you in the future, enhancement of public walkways, protection of key public views, and significant financial contributions to the community. The request in front of you here with the motions is to allow this to take its next step along its pathway, and that is to be referred to a public hearing. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I can answer questions, and we do have the landowner rep as well if there are questions that I can't answer. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. Councillor Perino, and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Holland. Great presentation, and very pleased to hear the language that you use. We like that. 2 very quick questions. The pathway that goes both, well, you know what I'm talking about. That'll be maintained, no problem there. Walked it 1,000 times. That's great. Thank you so much. That's the first one. Under the permitted uses, the zoning regulation, so permitted accessory uses, daycare, 1 dwelling unit per lot. Are you thinking of putting any residential dwelling on top of, is that in your plan at all?
Thank you, through your worship. Residential is not a primary use. This is a typical placeholder we find in zoning. In this case, it would be like a caretaker's building or something like that. In some cases, some industries would like to have someone living on site, and so they will allow a caretaker on that. This is really a placeholder of that use. It's not a primary use. This is not a residential project.
You did use Boxwood as a similar setup? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons, and then Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship. A random question. Are you aware that there are large informal settlements in there? Okay, that's something that your project team has considered?
Thank you, through your worship. Yeah, the ownership group is in an ongoing, continuous state of stewardship of this area. So they have a security firm that monitors that, but doesn't intervene. If intervention is required, it goes through the RCMP, and then they come in with the security team, and the owner comes in and removes the garbage that piles up over time. This is a situation you all know well in the city here. It's a chronic problem, a spin-off of the housing crisis and other crises that you deal with daily. So it's a stewardship approach. They're just constantly maintaining that, keeping the garbage from piling up, and following appropriate protocols and dealing with folks who choose to live there.
Thank you. I appreciate just knowing that you're aware of it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley, and then Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate the amount of land you're setting aside for environmental considerations. A couple of things, there's some degraded Garry Oak ecosystem in there, and I'm curious whether your plan includes rehabilitating some of that area to try to bring back some of that Garry Oak system.
Thank you, through your worship. The response to the Specific sub-areas in the environment there will happen over 2 ways. Right now, this is a land use question. When we get to those areas, the biophysical examination that will be required of that parcel or the parcels in that area would then begin to address what should be done there. And the second point is that half of the CAC money that would go that is intended for environmental and parks uses. So there would be a budget there to begin to take that on if that was the city's desire in the discussions at that point.
And just reading the environmental assessment, there's going to be an additional assessment of the land?
Yes.
Okay. I know that there's some vernal pools in there that people have brought to our attention, and that there may be some species at risk or rare species in there, like we have in other spots of Nanaimo, and potentially red-legged frog, which is, they use the vernal pools because they don't have to compete with the bullfrogs in the swamps. The bullfrogs survive in the swamp, and can't survive in the vernal pools, but they outcompete the indigenous frogs in the other swamp areas in the deeper pools. So I just want to say I appreciate the work that's been done on protecting the environment on this one. I think it's an important area to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Through you, I'm not sure if that question actually addressed what I'm asking, but in the environmental assessment, it mentions that under the recommendations that a construction environmental management plan should be prepared for each phase of development once detailed designs are complete and prior to commencing any site preparation works. Would that recommendation be followed?
Absolutely, through your worship, yes. Each stage, when we're doing urban projects, we kind of do a rezoning and a development permit, and it all gets stacked on top of each other. A project of this scale has those projects are accordioned out. So this is a land use conversation, and if council, depending on community feedback and other things you wish, if council in their wisdom supports the land use, we then need to go through a subdivision process, and that would be phased. And then we have to come back to the city for development permits for any individual building within any one of those parcels. So the horse has barely gotten out of its little container. It has multiple barns and stables and gates it has to get out of here, and council has many points of review over that. There will be environmental studies for each of these projects here that have to be, the environmental issues have to be reviewed for each one of those, because it's in an environmental DP area.
Thank you. Yes, it's a complicated and constrained site because of the number of water courses and vernal pools, and I see the high level perspective of it'd be nice to have light industry here, but the environmental constraints make it challenging, and I look forward to the further assessments that will be completed to give us a closer picture of the area. I have another question through to staff afterwards.
Councillor Armstrong.
Mine's for staff.
All right. Councillor Armstrong?
For staff.
For staff. Do you want to ask a question of staff?
Well, yeah, if you don't mind. We know that there's sewer connection issues out in that area. Is there any reason why the community can't their contribution go towards the sewer to help build a new sewer connection? Like, I mean, that's critical. Especially Sandstone as well going on board. Like, instead of, I know it's nice to have, your paths and all that, but we need the sewer. I'd much rather see money go to that so we don't have to borrow as much.
Mr. Helm.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, I think, so you're speaking to the, probably the millstone trunk and some of the
in the report, it says sewer is going to be an issue.
Some of the constraints. Well, the sewer. So the project will address the sanitary issues that are needed to support the project, and there are, as Mr. Rosen and his staff presented fairly recently to council, there are some identified sewer constraints that the city's the council's aware of that will be reporting back on options to fund to address. If I think that's what Councillor Armstrong is speaking to.
No, my question is, can we take the community amenity contribution and put it towards the sewer upgrades?
So the sewer upgrades to address the project will build.
No, I mean our big issue.
Yeah, well, the timing, I think, is, I was just kind of getting to, I think the point I'm getting to is there were a number of sewer constraint issues identified that were brought to council. So I think it's a timing issue as well. Some of those are more critical. The funding from like the community amenity contribution that we'd received through the project, it won't be coming
In time.
in time.
Okay.
And in quantity, I would say, to really address the issues that.
No, I appreciate that. I was just wondering because it's going to be expensive. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere?
Thank you. My question through to staff is whether the future development permits or subdivision applications would for sure come back to council, or would they be delegated authority?
Too early to determine, but likely they would not come back to council. There's a, so in, if I could maybe expand on that too. So some of what Mr. Holland has spoken to and is identified in the report, you can see that a number of conditions are identified as to be secured through a master development agreement. So that's in council's control, including the construction environmental management plan that that was the question related to earlier. So those are items that are secured through the rezoning to be addressed later. And as well, so subdivision approval, obviously that's outside of council's authority. Council sets the stage, the bylaws, the requirements that apply, the standards, and the development permit area requirements that apply in the case of subdivision. So council plays a role in setting the bylaw requirements and the guidelines that apply. Unless the, and development permit again is follow the guidelines, development is permitted, is the pathway. That's the way that process works. So council has played a role in setting and will continue to the bylaw requirements and the guidelines that apply to future subdivision and development permit. If the developer meets the requirements, follows the guidelines, complies with the guidelines, the development is approved. So the permit is approved.
Okay, and pardon me, I have another question.
Sorry, and I should have clarified that would be whether or not the permit is delegated or council approved. If it complies with the guidelines, then it must be approved.
Just because of the complexity of this site, is there a way to put a condition on the rezoning that the development permit or future decisions would come back to council and not be delegated authority?
No, that's not possible. And I think, again, if it complies with the guidelines, then it must be approved.
Okay, and one more question. From the environmental report, it mentioned that prior to any planned development of the properties, there's a recommendation regarding confirming whether any new policy or guidance documents have been provided by the province of BC regarding wetland boundary identification under the Water Sustainability Act, or any future legislation that applies to wetlands in BC, because the wetland ecosystem boundaries identified, particularly in Figure 2, were based on methods that are not officially tied to the Water Sustainability Act, and it's understood that an official methodology or policy may be developed sometime in the near future.
Yes, I can speak to that too, and through your worship to Councillor Eastmere. So that's identifying that, legislation is changing regularly. It's a dynamic world in that regard. That's just flagging, identifying that we understand, and the qualified environmental professional working for the property owner understands that the province is considering changes. There's been recently information released identifying that changes are pending, so we need to be live to what the implications of those changes are, and they may have bearing, they may have an impact on the proposed development. So we will review, of course, the development based on the requirements that apply at that time. For instance, if they came forward next year with, say, the rezoning was successful and they came forward next year for subdivision, we would apply the guidelines or the provincial requirements in place at the time. If they don't come forward for 5 years, again, we apply the provincial requirements in place at the time, and we update our bylaws and our guidelines accordingly. So that's just identifying that in this case, we actually anticipate some changes. They can't be reflected in the assessments that have been done at this point because they haven't been made clear. They're not actually provincial policy at this point or provincial requirements at this time, but we understand that there are changes in the works.
Thank you. And just to confirm, there is an additional environmental assessment that would take place as a condition of this rezoning.
There will be, through your worship, so there will be, yes, subsequent approvals, depending on when they come forward, will be evaluated based on the requirements in place at the time that they come forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock, you have a question.
Great, yeah, I think Councillor Eastmere raised, there was that section just about the Water Sustainability Act and that in some cases, if it was applied, that it may be larger boundary, and is that related at all to the conditions of rezoning? It says completed and updated biophysical assessment of the properties by a QEP in accordance with the environmental assessment recommendations, determine whether additional protections are necessary, including but not limited to wetland delineation assessments under the applicable guidelines, blah, blah, blah. Is that what that point in the conditions of rezoning that pertains to?
Yes, yeah, through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrock, yes. So it's just, that's explicitly flagging that, that those reviews will take place. So based on the legislation that's in place at the time that the development moves forward through different stages.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being so patient, Mr. Holland, Mr. Freed, and Mr. Holm for your fulsome answers to this. Councillor Eastern, would you care to move the motions?
Then the delegation, you can have a seat now. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026 number 4500.258 to rezone 2080 East Wellington Road and 2160 East Wellington Road from single dwelling residential R1 and light industrial to light industrial with site-specific accessory industrial office use to facilitate a light industrial subdivision pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026 number 4500.258 pass second reading, and I'd like to speak to it.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Brown, you've got a question or comment?
Just a comment, Your Worship. I think it was like 15 years ago, I remember talking to Keith Brown. This property was owned by Henry Rempel at length about it. At that time, it was the transfer of the South Wellington Park there and making that come together. This is a long time vision, long time in the OCP. I think it's well suited for, and I appreciate the efforts that have been made. So long time coming, a lot of effort over many years. So just want to say it has my support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley and then Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm ready to support this. I'm looking forward to the public hearing. I'm sure that we'll hear a lot of different things about this area, but this is the kind of light industry land that we need in Nanaimo, and so, you know, thank you.
Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I really appreciate the level of detail and information provided in this application and the fact that the developer reached out beforehand to give us an opportunity to ask questions. I really enjoyed reading the environmental report from the QEP on this. The level of detail was excellent. It does seem like a tricky site to redevelop, and when wetlands are something that the province is really interested in protecting, it becomes hard for me to envision how we can develop these areas but I think potentially there's a way that it can be done in a mindful way, and the mayor spoke earlier about nothing about us without us, so I look forward to the community having a chance to weigh in on this at the public hearing that will take place as a result of this passing tonight. Thank you.
The motion is second reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Counselor Eastmere.
Move that council direct staff to hold a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.258.
Seconder, Counselor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Counselor Eastmere.
Move that council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.258, as outlined in attachment D of the staff report titled Rezoning Application Number RA 509, 2080 and 2160 East Wellington Road, dated 2026, July 27th, prior to final adoption.
Seconded, Counselor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. On to C, development permit application number DP 1397-3679 Shenton Road. Jackson Lowe.
Your worship, only if there's
By
questions.
Zoom?
Yeah, if there's questions for the architect, they are in attendance via Zoom.
Any questions for Mr. Lowe, assuming he's still there? Councillor Armstrong, good evening, Mr. Lowe, nice to see you.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Perino, and then Armstrong have questions.
Oh, okay, thank you, Your Worship. And just a very quick question to Mr. Lowe. My understanding is that you're going to construct a three-story mixed-use development. That's great, containing 17 multiple family dwelling units. Is that correct? I just wanted to verify.
Correct.
Very pleased to see it. We need more homes, and that's a great area. I'm pleased to see that come. I hope it goes through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, just a question on what width you're using for small vehicle parking.
Small vehicle is, I'm trying to remember, it's whatever the zoning bylaw was required of us.
Okay.
I think it's 4.5, 4.7, I'm not sure. We deal with a lot of municipalities, so forgive me if I can't remember the exact number.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering because I know there's some buildings that have small parking and they actually are going over into it because their cars don't fit. Thanks.
No, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I had a question. The design panel had made a recommendation about considering bird-friendly glazing, and I see that there was a revised plan which includes reduced glazing on the south lakeside facade. Is that a direct response to the bird-friendly glazing consideration?
Correct. Yeah, there was sort of the options of looking at bird-friendly glazing and or reducing the amount of glazing on that south side, and the client had chosen to reduce the amount of glazing.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that a couple of changes were made in response to the design panel's recommendations, including that reduced glazing, more bike parking, a ramp between Shenton Road and the main building entrances, retaining or replacing trees that couldn't be retained, and switching out the indoor amenity space for a viewing pavilion, given it's right on the lake, and some stepped walls to allow for more plantings, and also some patterned concrete. So I appreciate those responses to the design panel's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Worship. I'm curious about the viewing platform. Is that a public amenity, or is that just for the residents and the workers in the building?
It's primarily for the residents and the employees of the main floor. The pavilion is, I mean, there's no public walkway accessing that pavilion, and there's no real room to create such a public walkway to that pavilion. So when we were asked to create a public amenity for the residents of the building, that was our solution to doing that. And the form of that pavilion actually emulates what historically was mining, and sort of shaft and cover. So that's what came out of that.
Okay, thank you. And I can see there's a blanket statutory right-of-way for future Diver Lake Loop Trail across the property, and I assume that that would be in front of the pavilion, that there's space in front of the pavilion for that trail, or?
Correct. There's lots of room in front of that. There's a whole sort of protected SPIA area and waterway setback. So we're a fair ways upland of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Someone care to move the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor and any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe. You've had a long evening waiting for us.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
The next is liquor license amendment application number LA 168-1, number 105-1825 Bowen Road. Mr. Din. Yes. You're here to respond to questions. Are there questions for Mr. Din? Poor Mr. Din, he's had to wait all night, no questions. Ah well. Move the recommended motion, Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. You've done your advocacy. Well done. We're on to bylaws. Councillor Eastmere, ready?
Move
the first is nope. The first is A, zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.255.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.255, pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.256.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.256, pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Next is zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.257.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.257, pass third reading.
Seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is council procedure bylaw amendment bylaw 2026, number 7272.06. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 7272.06 be adopted.
Your worship, sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay. Move that council procedure bylaw amendment bylaw 2026, number 7272.06 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None.
I am opposed.
Sorry?
I am opposed.
Pardon me, Councillor Eastmere is opposed. Motion carries. The next is off-street parking bylaw, off-street parking regulations bylaw 2026, number 7453.
Move that off-street parking regulations bylaw 2026, number 7453 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor, Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Sorry, you're opposed? Oh, and Councillor Thorpe. My goodness. We're getting controversial late at night. Well done. Next is subdivision and development servicing bylaw 2026, number 7454. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that subdivision and development servicing bylaw 2026, number 7454 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in. Councillor Brown.
Thanks. I'll be very quick. I know it's late. And I voted in favor of the first three readings. And I've had some time to reflect on it. I've actually had some people kind of comments about it. And I thought Councillor Perino asked a very good question about sort of the lack of engagement by people that this would impact. And my understanding was there was very little engagement, and I appreciate that probably the people that worked on the project aren't here. But I'm just curious, when we didn't get a response, did we dig deeper and see why folk?
Through your worship to Councillor Brown, I know staff spoke to it when the bylaw was introduced.
Yeah.
And my understanding is, yes, there was follow-up with some, and the outreach was to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a substantial number of consultants that are involved in this work, and limited response. It could be due to capacity. I don't know.
Okay. I'm gonna vote in favor. I won't be around when a lot of these sidewalks get built on council, but if anyone is, I'm very concerned that the cost of some of this stuff is gonna be very, very high and will be realized in the affordability equation. And I think it should be, I'm not gonna make any motions, but I think people should put it in their calendar to have a little bit of a review on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship, and it did concern me. We sent out a whole bunch of questionnaires to the development community. 2 responded. What staff then did was go back out, get in touch with a bunch of other people, and they heard very much the same thing. There was definitely a capacity issue, but also some of the development community was saying, listen, let's try this out, see how it goes. We'll come back and make changes as the need comes forward. So I appreciate Councillor Brown asking the question because I was very concerned about that. So I got the answer that I wanted, and will be voting in favor of the adoption.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is Housing Agreement Bylaw 2026, number 7458. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2026, number 7458 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is Residential Tenant Assistance Bylaw 2026, number 7459.
Move that Residential Tenant Assistance Bylaw 2026, number 7459 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor and any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2026, number 7159.27.
Move that bylaw. Sorry.
Thank you.
Move that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2026, number 7159.27 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no notices of motion. We have no correspondence. Other business, Councillor Eastmere, motion re the interim use of number 6 Commercial Street.
Yes, my motion is that council direct staff to provide a report on options for the interim use of 6 Commercial Street, the former Gene Burns site. And if it's seconded, I'll second.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So I'm really interested in bringing the central part of our downtown back to life, and right now it is a fenced-off hole and has been ever since a fire destroyed the old A&B Sound building at the corner of Commercial and Terminal in 2016. And the city bought this property for an undisclosed price in 2021 in an effort to ensure that it didn't sit idle for many more years. When we were elected, we all spoke about a shared desire to get something in that hole by 2026. For me, I'd love to see affordable apartments and attainable housing so people can enjoy living in our amazing downtown, including the workers who are vital to our local businesses, students, seniors, families, and like the old A&B Sound building, affordable artist studio space like what the A&B Sound building used to feature. We have tried. There was an RFP put out by the city and a proponent selected to develop that site, and while I didn't personally support that proposal, there was hope that something would materialize, and it didn't. Then we put it into BC Builds pretty recently, hoping that a developer and nonprofit partner would be interested in developing the site with support from BC Housing to build affordable rental housing with commercial on the ground floor. The city was and is seeking a developer to transform the site into a landmark mixed-use rental housing project, and we were offering a 60-year lease at no cost for the land to any developer that meets the criteria consistent with BC Builds, but again, nothing materialized. So right now, the cost of redeveloping the site into a building is evidently not feasible for many reasons and unlikely to happen anytime soon. The cost of building in today's economy, the site constraints, geotechnical issues and seismic requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nothing in that hole except some cool street art, and I'm not okay with letting it sit idle for another decade with no action until conditions improve, which they may or may not. So I think it's time to get creative, and I'm really curious to see what options for interim uses our staff could come up with. I think there's amazing potential for a mini temporary amphitheater or performance space, food truck parking, or a mini container pop-up shop area. a pop-up community garden using raised beds, or a temporary skate park using portable or modular skate park elements. These are just ideas, many of which I've heard while speaking to the community, and people are really interested in temporary uses for this underused piece of prime real estate, and I think they would all work in their own way. It might require a little poured concrete to make this area more accessible, but I really see the potential to open up and enliven this space in a way that creates more usable, enjoyable, and vibrant community space in our downtown core.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, and I'm assuming that the cost of remediation will be in there because we can't do anything unless remediation is done, correct? We can't put anything on there due to fire risks, safety risks, health risks, environmental risks, all of that.
Through the chair, I think between me and Mr. Holm, we can answer. I would say there are some temporary uses that we could do that don't involve digging into any potential contamination, which I do or do not know whether we've looked into that on the site. Mr. Holm, do you have any more on that?
No, I don't imagine it's been evaluated for temporary uses such as, I'm just thinking to the, for example, there's a gas station site, Turner Road, and the Island Highway that was temporarily used as a food garden. So there are options, raised beds again. So there's different options that could, that could be undertaken. We'd have to investigate, obviously, but
So that'll be part of the report, that's all I'm asking.
yeah, exactly. It'd have to be, and there are some, there are some other issues with that site that would have to be looked at as far as, the access and stability of, and fall protection and different things like that, given some of the site condition. But I think the site contamination issues probably aren't significant for a temporary use. For building, the geotechnical and contamination issues are definitely more substantial. That's where the building code and also the provincial contaminated sites regulations apply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley and then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you. I'm in support of this. I've heard from residents as well that'd like to see maybe the area filled in or used as an amphitheater. I've seen amphitheaters that are below ground level where you can walk around the amphitheater and the seats are all aligned to watch a show and potentially have container shops or small portable shops surrounding it that provide avenues for small micro businesses. I think there's lots of opportunities here and they could potentially be permanent, not necessarily interim. I think the geotechnical problems with this site are going to make it very difficult for developing in a cost-effective way. But, I would have loved to have seen commercial on the ground floor and residents above, but that hasn't worked out in the years that we've been working on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's high time to find a temporary use for the site. I'm getting tired of walking by the hole in the middle of the downtown. I think that there could be some creative ways that we can enliven that space, and I think everybody's tired of walking by the hole, and I think it's holding back the progression of redeveloping and enlivening the downtown. One question or just thought, I know some people brought up the constraints for building in the site, and that one of the barriers is just the unknown around the geotechnical, and that we did a geotechnical up to 6 stories, but the economics of building to 6 stories just doesn't make it feasible given all the constraints, but there hasn't been a geotechnical study that looks at going above 6 stories, say to 12, and that might could change the economics a little bit. And so I'm curious in that report, even at a cursory level, if any constraints could be identified of like a longer term solution be put in there, and that maybe, if we did a little bit more work, that we could open up a greater breadth of opportunity to actually have the housing that everybody hopes to see there and the commercial space that ultimately would probably make the highest best use of that spot. Thank you.
Mr. Holm.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, through your worship, Councilor Gesselbrecht, you're looking for a response on that?
Yeah, is it possible to add that into a report?
It's hard to tell sometimes. I know.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of throwing it out there because I do think that, you know, we've been trying hard to get development there and it's been capped and it's like we've been unsuccessful with what we've done so far, but maybe a little bit more push, so.
Yeah, I think Ms. Skeels would probably be best to speak to the information that we have on hand. Yeah, there may be other barriers to, and we see through market development, constructing above 6 stories, and depending on site conditions, the building code requirements do change depending on building height as well. So it's probably not just like the economics of it's probably not just a geotechnical related issue, but we can probably speak to the consultant that did the work for us and see if what would be required to look at expanding the investigation. But I think the economics are probably related to would be related to the height of building. I think there'd be a limitation or sort of a cost barrier there as well.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Through the chair, if I might jump in on this one. If I understand the motion as it is, it's for the interim or temporary use. And so if council wanted us to look at something longer term, which through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrecht, I think that would be a separate motion. So through the chair, the interim use allows a lot more flexibility, creativity, or perhaps deviation from the standards that would be required to have geotechnical for permanent use. Thank you.
Absolutely. I was just kind of lobbing an idea out there, and we can follow up on it when the temporary usage report comes, if it's something of interest. Thank you.
I would remind council we have an in-camera meeting after this. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Question period, Ms. Gurry. All right, Mr. Arnett, 12A. Please, welcome. Nice to see you.
You too, Mayor, Council. First, let me apologize for the writing. I am barely able to write. I appear before you on behalf of Grace Elliott Nielsen, Executive Director, and the management team for Tilikum Lalem Aboriginal Friendship Center and the Board of Directors. My name is Steve Arnett. I'm a Métis Nation BC citizen, a firekeeper, and an old one, on my way to being an elder in 10 days at 75. I'm here to ask a question in relation to 12A, which you made a decision on with respect to the recommendation from staff that our permissive tax exemption for our young mums expansion be denied. So my question is, based on that, could, through you, Mayor, as your worship as chair, can staff tell me what the total amount of the tax exemptions were for the 6 PTs that were removed, along with, I heard, I think, the figure of 27,000 for the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, in terms of total of the permissive tax exemptions that represents, against the $6,000, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a real hardship for TLAFC in terms of the housing that we went ahead and provided, despite what Councillor Manning said, that BC Housing did to many, many nonprofits across the province. In our case, we asked, we spent a lot of money. I raised a lot of money with TLAFC.
Mr.
Yes, I guess it's a question, sorry. I'll answer the question, sorry.
You of all people, Mr.
Yes, I should.
Experienced council.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like you, Mayor, you know, put me in front of a microphone.
I know. Ms. Mercer, can you answer the question? There was a question in there.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I don't have the total off the top of my head, but if I can get back to the group.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
I just want to say, I don't know if you heard when Councillor Manley asked that, the staff said that if they entered into a housing agreement, it'll be way less than even getting a permissive tax exemption.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
In terms of process, all of that was sort of put on us just at the very last minute, and that's no reflection on staff. I don't do that as a former 10-year councillor myself. I will follow up with them, and you will be hearing back from us certainly before they pull the pin on the writ around this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Safe drive home.
Thank you.
The next is 13B.
So, Your Worship,
Mr. Chapman?
I think Mr. Chapman had a question about the attachment to 13B. However, after reviewing it and discussing it, this matter is going to public hearing, so issues that are, even though Mr. Chapman was saying that attachment doesn't specifically relate to the public hearing matter, then that's not the matter that was on the agenda. So it's kind of splitting hairs and opening it up to others, so unfortunately that question isn't available. And he can speak to, at the public hearing, he can speak to mayor and council about the attachment and or to staff. And I followed up with an email to him on that.
Mr. Chapman, nothing wrong with trying to get your oar in the water first, but you'll have to attend the public hearing. Sorry. And the final one is 12D, Jeff Annesley. Mr. Annesley. You know the drill. Introduce yourself for the record and ask your question, please.
Jeff Annesley. The question is about the 3rd Street upgrades, which are part of the quarterly report. First question is the 5.1 million, and does that encompass the entire project? Is that part of the project?
Ms. Mercer.
What project were you referring to?
The 3rd Street upgrades, NAPIT, the 5.172 million.
Right, I see it now. That probably wouldn't be for the entire project, but probably most of the work. There could be other costs included in there, but I would say that's probably the bulk of the project, but I'm not an expert on this particular project.
But for that company, are they just doing the sewer infrastructure, or are they doing the road infrastructure as well? You don't.
We would have to get back to you on that.
Ms. Mercer will get back to you with details, Mr. Annesley.
Okay, and just okay, well, that eliminates my second question then too. And just from my knowledge, are we replacing that infrastructure with smart infrastructure? Do we know? Is the piping beam that's being taken out? Because it just says we need to upgrade that, and I'm just wondering if that was the main part of the upgrade.
Ms. Vogelson.
Through the chair to the speaker, Ms. Annesley, could you clarify when you say smart infrastructure, what your definition of that is?
Oh, just like, you know, like when the councillors went to Calgary, they talked about the piping that went in was they're taking out the old stuff and they're putting in new stuff that has more, like control the flow, control that sort of thing. Is that what we've done here on 3rd Street, and just more broadly in general?
Through the chair, through council to the speaker, what I will say is our engineering and public works department use the best technology, and when we have the ability to upgrade through our road systems, we do replace to more resilient standards, and in times that includes seismic, at times that includes future-proofing for water flows or materials that are more durable. So we can get back to you with the specifics if you're interested through Mr. Rosen, who's currently wisely not here.
Yeah.
He wasn't anticipating this question. So I think we have your email.
Yes, you do.
And so we can provide council with that information as well as yourself.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gurry, at this stage, just a motion for adjournment?
So
Or
you
do we
can,
have to Move back in camera.
Yeah, so you're going to recess the open, even though there'll be no items when we come back in, it'll just be to adjourn, to proceed in camera. So we-
Motion to recess the open meeting. Moved Counselor Armstrong, seconded Counselor Eastmere. All those in favor? Any opposed?